power on.
Accessing historical database. Year 2020. The tech giants become aware of the greatest threat to their corporatist domination. An obscure science and tech podcast becomes a major factor in a peaceful open source revolt against the military Silicon Valley industrial complex. The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
It is time for that weekly dose, that weekly injection of Sovryn Tech.
Straight to the heart.
Whoa, straight to hay. Is that wait, how many bands have that song? Like, that has a song titled Straight to the Heart?
Too many to count.
Battle Beast, at least.
At least,
yeah. I mean, and certainly that might be the best of the bunch. I don't know. I'm sure someone would argue with us otherwise. But as you can tell by the sound of that incredibly melodious, stunning voice, I am being joined by none other than Ellen Sovryn for this episode of Sovryn Tech. Woo!
Built to last.
Built to last.
And you're instant action. See, we're just taking sayings from products and applying it to ourselves, and I think it works really well.
No, it does. It does. I like instant action. I like that. I use that phrase, not instant action, but all action. I use that a lot when I'm promoting the show because I do think it's a very exciting show. I don't know about you. But
yeah, I totally agree. I think you're very exciting.
That's why you fell in love with me, right? No.
Yes. I heard your voice coming through my headphones, and
right into
I
your
just
brain.
knew that I had to find you.
Yeah, this is what it had to be. Well, anyway, my love, we have a great episode of Sovryn Tech to get into. In fact, something that happened just hours before we were to record. And that has to do with Twitter. That is coming up. But before we get into that, why don't we talk about, I was half tempted to talk about penguins. And
that story. Oh, geez. As a total non sequitur.
Yeah. And how far can they poop?
6 feet. At
6
least.
feet.
The projectile.
They can project their shit 6 feet.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's important to them given the landscape that they live on.
That is amazing. Well, I imagine a lot of the blue check marks on Twitter were suddenly shitting 6 feet. But maybe we'll talk about that story more at some point. I don't know if we'll get into this episode, but, we're just going to have A on again, I guess.
Yeah. It's terrible. We have too many things to talk about. It's such a predicament.
Oh, what a shame.
The only thing that we can do is just record more together.
That's right. But the people love it. So, in fact, actually right now, the highest listened to episode in the past month is, what did I title it? Sex in the Sea Orbiter?
Oh,
That's the last one you were on?
Yeah.
By a long shot.
Wow,
so people,
that's great.
Yeah, people clearly love it when you're on. I can't blame them. I mean, there's a reason over the years that I made you a co-host along, some years ago, and what a great time that was. I mean, it's just because you deliver the goods.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored that you plebes would listen to me.
Ooh, hey, wow, there it is. Folks.
I'm just kidding. I know all of your listeners are brilliant.
Just, this is the problem. Wonder Woman gets tied up in her own lasso of truth. And anyway, but before we talk about any of that other stuff, it's been a bit of a tradition lately when you've come on that we end up talking about, we talk about the books that we're reading or listening to, perhaps more particularly, or one or the other. I mean, it's all kind of the same, kind of. I have had conversations where I've said, I don't know if listening to books is such a hot thing. maybe, reading books might have a little more benefit to it. I'll say this. In fact, we were having this conversation earlier. You were actually, so a couple weeks ago, we were going to the gym. And you had asked me, you said, I'd love to get my hands on an encyclopedia set. Like a
real solid,
honest to Satan
20
encyclopedia
volume
set.
encyclopedia set.
Yeah, an Encyclopedia Britannica, World Book, whatever. Whoever's making them now. I think there's a bunch of them that have kind of gone by the wayside as late. And in so when you asked that question, I started looking into it. It's like, okay, let's see if we can get our hands on, whatever version of Encyclopedia Britannica. And I know instantly what people are thinking is that, well, but we have Wikipedia. What do we need that for? Well,
many reasons.
Yes, many reasons.
Of which we will divulge to you over the next 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, one thing so what I found out in researching this is that Encyclopedia Britannica has not published in the Western world, as it were, since 2010.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
They don't have any people to buy their product anymore.
Right.
Nobody wants to read the encyclopedias?
Yeah. So it's crazy. And now they did come out with one of their final yearbook, which I think was celebrating like the 250th anniversary of Encyclopedia Britannica becoming a thing. The yearbook was always like this add-on that you get every year that might have like important info in it or whatever else. And it was a great way to not have to buy a new encyclopedia set every year. Okay. And you could just buy that book and it would kind of update it. And then maybe in 5-10 years, you'd buy another big set, right? Because these things usually cost like $1,000 or some crazy amount. Even back when I was a kid, we always had an encyclopedia set, but it was, I know it cost a mint. That's for sure. That's why people held on to them, even if they were 50 years old. The shit wasn't cheap, right?
Yeah, because it's like all the gathered knowledge of our civilization.
Or a good shot at it, good stab at it, And I get it that we are in a world where, talk about, not to quote a book out of the Bible, but is knowledge increasing at an accelerated pace faster than it ever has in at least modern recorded human history? Yeah, you bet your ass it is. But at the same time, as soon as you said it, something just struck in me like, yeah, this is a good idea. Now, I did find out that in 2016, they still had an edition of Encyclopedia Britannica come out, but it's produced in India and it's called the Global Edition. It is in English, but it's called the Global Edition, I guess to service other countries, perhaps that don't have so much internet access. World Book still produces an encyclopedia. They have a 2020 edition and so on. And they obviously hang their hat on the fact that they're kind of the last man standing in this whole scenario, right? So anyway, it was an interesting thing. And you tell me, what inspired you to want an encyclopedia?
Well, initially what made me want it was just to have a physical book, because whenever I get on Wikipedia, there's just so many things that I want to learn about. That sometimes I just draw a blank and I'm sitting there staring at the search bar, like, what do I type in?
Right.
But with an encyclopedia, you can just open it up and you can look through the appendix, or you can just flip through pages.
And there's visual aids.
Yeah, exactly.
There's visual things to entice you.
It's a very permanent record of things that we know or have happened or just that are. And I just love that. I love being able to explore so much in a book. Yeah,
absolutely. And the other thing that came up for me was that, and this is what started me talking about this here, is that books, the need for paperback or, paper books, right? Dead tree books, the need for that is that online and electronically in general, except for maybe a PDF, but even then I wonder, information can change. Now, that can be a beneficial thing, certainly, right? That can be a good thing because you get the latest info. But then also, in the present world that we live in, where a lot of news has a bent, and not to say that an encyclopedia couldn't have a bias either, okay? But,
sure.
And the Britannica has a very interesting history of where, people have called it out saying it was wrong, but there's actually a point to this. But bottom line being is that an encyclopedia, a paperback, I'll just call it that. I know it's hardcover, but a paper version of an encyclopedia I mean, when it's printed, and that information is there. And no matter what Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, or take your list of the celebrity or, thought leader or thought controller, wants to do about it, they can't change it. It is there in effectually stone. And I think that this is really important when all of our information is going digital, and we also hand off control of that data on the daily basis and trust others with it, be it in cloud environments and whatever else. And there was actually an episode of SG1. I've brought it up before. I won't spend a ton of time talking about it, but there's an episode of SG1 that deals with this very thing, where like basically everybody was jacked into the central computer on this other planet, and the planet could erase their memories and make them even forget that some people existed. And the only way that they knew that people previously existed, the SG1 team, is because they found books, hardback books that said, no, originally your population was this big. It wasn't this small. The computer's lying to you, and so on. And so I think it's such an important thing. And that's really it, is why I think we always need printed books, is because, and this actually, honestly, admittedly, this also happened with printed books. If you ever read Fahrenheit 451, and if you read Ray Bradbury's, I think it's his coda, it's at the end of it, he talks about how he found out that varying authors, that publishing houses, to bring down the cost of their books, have literally been stripping sentences out of, all kinds of people, Virgil, classic authors, editions and edits are a thing, but that's the point, is that, let's have all those editions. Let's keep them printing. You want to make changes to them, fine, but let's hope that we keep, somewhat of the originals of the autographs at any given point. So books, holding books in your hand, reading books is so important, especially today when, I'm not one who's going to cry that it was the Russians or fake news or any of that kind of shit. Okay. I would argue that pretty much anything that comes out of the mouths of journalists is more or less fake, more or less. As far as when it comes to politics and things like that, certainly I exist off of a lot of what journalists, the research that they do and so on, but I also exist off of calling bullshit on it often enough. But that information changes, and, it's very easy to find yourself wondering what the fuck is real, and while again, it's funny, when Britannica first came out in the 18th century, critics called it the Gospel of Satan.
Which is so appropriate because Lucifer is the bringer of light, of
knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. And doctors were flipping out because it was giving information. It had information in it that only doctors had at the time.
It undermined their authority.
Exactly. Yes. And that is so key, because guess what, folks? As much as you like to think I wonder, and look, the internet is a powerful thing, but as much as you think, what wonders it has brought us, at the same time, it's really given us a lot of lack of control of information in a very real way. So, having the good old fashioned copy of the encyclopedia, I think that's a damn beautiful thing. And what a wonderful idea.
It really is. And you can look at it all day and it won't make your eyes hurt.
That's another beauty. In fact, that'd be a great segue into a story we're going to get into, but we'll save that because we're talking about books. So why don't we go ahead and let's talk about the books that we're actually listening, because people, they love it. In fact, someone was already asking for, hey, does anybody have a copy of this? Or you were reading, or you were listening to the Introduction to Judaism by Shai Cherry,
right?
For the great courses. And I already had people asking, hey, can we get copies of that, or where can I find this and all
great.
That? So people love it when we do this. So before we get into other tech news and science news, why don't we go ahead and talk about what books we're reading? You want to start it off, or do you want me to hit it?
Oh, sure. I can start it off.
Go for it.
Okay. So the books that I wanted to talk about, I actually finished listening to them about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So initially what sparked my interest in the books that I'm going to talk about was when I went to visit my family a few months back, I was talking to my great-grandfather. He's like the elder in our family. And he said something about how, like, he traced our lineage back to Pontiac, this great Native American warrior. And I was so curious because I barely know anything about Native Americans, but for him to say that, like, that's part of my history, it kind of sparked my interest. And I'm not going to go down the road of, like, what that means to me or anything, but it's a part of history that I think has been widely erased.
Or ignored.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Let's be clear here. Most people don't know a whole lot about Native American history.
Well, it's certainly not taught in public schools.
No. I mean, me personally, I fortunately, and I do consider it a benefit, I did have the benefit of having two of my best friends when I was a teenager were the sons of the head of the United Six Nations, so like I have some understanding of the Iroquois, but that's the thing is it's not, it's not a homogeneous thing, right? Like, I mean, there's so many different tribes and anyway,
yeah, and
continue.
all of the tribes functioned independently as separate nations.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you were like even if you were a Chippewa, for example,
Right.
And your two tribes coexisted within the same like 100-mile span of each other, that doesn't, like, you might trade with each other, but like the politics and the governing of each tribe happened completely independently.
Yeah.
And all Native Americans were essentially like that, at least in the northern part of the United States.
Right.
So anyway, I became very interested, and I just looked to see what was on, what was in the bookstore as far as audiobooks for, Native American Chippewa history.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with a few books from Charles River editors, and they're a couple hours long each. They're about Pontiac's War, Little Turtle's War, and I think it was King James or King Charles. I don't remember exactly, but it was like a Native American who was named a king, but he wasn't actually a king. It was just sort of like a title that was given to him by the settlers.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I learned so much about like what Chippewa are, their origin story, where they came from, and mostly what was talked about was the struggle that Chippewa had after they came into contact with people from Europe. Like the French were mostly friendly, they traded with them, but they essentially introduced like guns to a Stone Age population. And then, England was sending people over here, and they had vested interests and were trying to like get in on the fur trade because it was actually much more lucrative than what they initially came here for.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just lots of tragedy happened throughout their history, and it had mostly to do with these tribes being caught up in battles that the Europeans were waging against, or the British were waging against the French.
Right.
And the natives were generally just pawns in those battles. And that in itself decimated a lot of the population. And that's kind of what Pontiac is famous for. He kind of led this charge against Fort Detroit, or back then it would have been pronounced in the French way, Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
But he united the Chippewa Nation against the British taking the fort from the French.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to call it a byproduct. I mean, I guess it's a byproduct because I think most wars are fought between, two major powers generally, because otherwise, it's not really a war, it's a slaughter. If the other side isn't somehow equal to the task, as it were. There is generally some minority or population unrelated that ends up getting stuck in the middle of this. You see it in the history of the Jews. You see it in the history of blacks. You see it in the history of, again, like you mentioned, the Native Americans. This happens often with Arabs. To this day, I mean, there's always some minority population that's going to pay the price. It just seems to always happen with every single war. But because they're a minority population, I guess nobody seems to care, unfortunately. So anyway, it just adds to that tragic history, of war. But go ahead if you have
it's definitely true. In these audiobooks, they talk about some of the specific battles that happened,
mm-hmm.
and it really is tragic because at least for me, the experience was the Native Americans initially had all of North America to roam around and essentially live the most peaceful lifestyle. They were just hunters and gatherers. There was in hunting areas, there were generally 5 or 6 people in 100 square miles of land,
mm-hmm.
which is crazy to think about now.
Mhm.
But yeah, they were transitory as well. You know, they would stay in one place for a few months and then move on. And they really knew how to live in harmony with the land and what they needed. Uh, and then, you know, British settlers came and started changing all that. The
Sure.
natives were selling their land off because they didn't have anything else really to trade with after they had practically wiped out all of the fur trade in the northern hemisphere because they just hunted all of the animals practically to extinction.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
and then there were also the battles and, you know, smallpox and other illnesses coming from a population that they had never been previously introduced to. So yeah, it was kind of horrifying to learn about this, really, because you're going from like practically utopia to like slowly decimating the population in the most tragic and bitter ways.
Yeah, I mean, tell me if you think this is fair. So, I mean, a lot of those deals that the Native Americans all around the country were making with, you know, whatever settlers happen to come. I don't think it's unfair to call them invaders, quite frankly, but regardless.
Some of them were, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know the French seem to have a better relationship with the Native Americans than the English did by a long shot, right?
Well, once the United States became a country, you know,
Mhm.
once the Revolutionary War happened and the United States gained its independence,
Mhm.
then they became the real terrorists against the Native Americans.
Right. You're saying the Americans.
Yes.
Yeah, the United States America, the
Yeah,
colonials.
right.
Sure.
They had the expansionist ideals and they were they didn't understand that the natives were allowing the British and
Mhm.
the French to stay on their land. But when the British lost, they basically ceded all of their land to the United States. So the United States was expecting that the natives would give them their land as well, but it wasn't theirs to give in the first place.
Well, yeah, and you're hitting at the point that I'm wondering about. So, English, the language, is a mercantile language. It's very harsh. It has concepts built within it. There's a reason that it became that in our century, or even in the 20th century, that it basically became like the lingua of trade. You know, it became the language of trade. And that's because at its heart, it is mercantile. Like it has concepts of property and other things. And I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that it has those concepts very much built into it. This is true for any language. Other languages have concepts built into them. I mean, you have entire languages around the world that don't have the conjugate to be, you know, and that changes the way one thinks because not everything has necessarily a definitive, shall we say, perspective. I would imagine that the Native Americans, when they made these deals, they could not, and it's not because they're inferior, far from, okay, far from. They could not grasp the way that the English say, or who, you know, any Europeans coming over thought, because in their language, these notions of ownership or that, no, this automatically goes to me. What, you know, it's grandfathered in, guys. And it's like, well, what's a grandfather? What the fuck are you talking about? You know, like, I mean, I could kind of just imagine. My point being is that, you know, like there was just something lost in translation, and that's putting it mildly. And I mean, do you feel like the book, it sounds like it did. Do you feel like these books in any way kind of illustrated that notion?
I think if you spend some time reflecting on what happened, then certainly you could come to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least in the New England area, the natives, they were selling land to the settlers.
Right.
But I don't think they really had a good idea of what property meant.
What ownership meant.
Yes.
Right.
Because very soon they ended up barely having any.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused a lot of problems between the natives and the settlers. And it actually was part of what fomented one of the major wars that happened between the settlers and the Native Americans.
Right. Yeah. I feel like when we look at history, we anthropomorphize a lot. Not just anthropomorphize as in the sense that, I don't know, we make tigers act or imagine that they act like humans, or like that wolves act like humans and they get married or something. It's like, no, it's a fucking wolf. It doesn't get married. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Native Americans never built walls. They
Right.
didn't have like property lines.
Right.
So like the concept of like putting up a wall to keep out the cattle of your neighbors from trampling your crops, they didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Like it was just the earth owned itself.
Yes, right. The land owns itself. Yeah. So a lot of, I feel like a lot of our problems, and when we look back at history and we're going, wow, what were they doing? Why did they allow this? Why did they do this and everything? We anthropomorphize our own, even just our own linguistic nature onto other peoples that don't have our language. Like, there's an old, I've brought this saying up many times on the show. There's an old saying, I learned it when I was in the military and I was learning Farsi. Was that when you learn another language, you gain another soul. The concept, what that means is that you literally learn in a completely new way to think. And we don't grasp that about each other often enough. Sometimes people do. Like I think Reagan came out at one point in his diaries and said, if I understood how the Iranians thought, I would have never went to, Iran-Contra would have never happened on our end or whatever. Point being is that like most of us just don't want to accept that there are different ways of thinking, and worse, most of us don't want to accept maybe our way of thinking is wrong. And that's where people suddenly stop as soon as you bring up this whole notion, right?
Right. The unfortunate thing is, like, I think the natives lived a very wonderful life in many ways, but they were overtaken by this ideology. I'm not going to say it was superior, but it was certainly dominant.
It was dominant and different. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that. And it's not until you read the horrors that went down, that happened, which is what you did. Well, anyway, I hope if others read these books, I hope that they stop to think like, how did this even happen? And then go that far to say, it's the way like that. Even my meta talk, not meta talk, but my self-talk, could have even, brought that on, or their self-talk, the colonials, the English at the time, whoever, and so on. So anyway, what else do you got more on that, or what else are you reading?
I guess I just want to say, like, I've talked to other people who have native ancestors and they've like gone down the same road that I have.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to think about it because it really is terrible. And honestly, if you read the history true to its form, the natives weren't like the good guys, and neither were the British or the French.
Sure.
Like everyone did something wrong.
Plenty of ugliness on all sides.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if the fighting hadn't begun in the first place, I think we would live in a very different world now than what we have.
Yeah. No, there you go. You go.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to spend too long talking about it.
Yeah. Well, we've got other things we'll get into. But yeah.
I'd love to hear what books you're listening to or reading.
Well, I finally, and I talked about this last time you were on, because a lot of times I read books out of utility, like out of a necessity. And admittedly, that's an annoying thing. Audiobooks certainly help with that affair because I can do so very quickly. I can easily, there's books I could listen to 2 books in a day, while I'm working and whatever. If I really, put the task on it, but it's important also to stop and chew, what you're digesting as far as content goes. And I've been reading, in fact, you turned me on. Well, you do that all the time.
I do.
You do that like all day long.
You can't hide it.
No, I can't. Ooh, it's amazing we're doing this podcast. But anyway, if they only knew how close we were sitting to each other here. So anyway, we're sharing a mic, folks. So if at any point we sound kind of far away, it's because we're sharing a mic here in the studio. But so you turned me on to this, and it is books. It's The Courage to Be Disliked.
I was so excited when you started reading this.
Yeah, and I read the sequel too, because that book was wildly popular. It's by a couple of Japanese people, and the other one is a sequel to it, which is The Courage to Be Happy. And these are both books that are trying to condense and reintroduce the philosophy or
and
the psychology. Yep.
It's a psychology and philosophy.
Yeah, of Alfred Adler. Alfred Adler, who was a contemporary of Jung, Freud, and so on, even friends at points. But then there's points where, much like Jung and Freud, people are very familiar with how they split off from each other wildly. Adler split off from them as well. These books are about, as far as audiobooks, are like 6 hours a piece. So lengthwise, in a physical book, they wouldn't be too long, in my opinion, as far as that goes, or at least I wouldn't define that as long. But you really got to take these babies in. It is not something I could possibly describe in 5 minutes here, or even 20 minutes, or even 2 hours. But what I heard, I liked. Perhaps the most controversial thing, and I'll put it out there to entice people to read this, is that Adler believed there was no such thing as trauma. And he felt that he could prove it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And I think he makes a hell of a case. And
I agree.
Yeah.
As someone who's been through traumatic events.
As we all have. Yeah.
He convinced me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked, or not necessarily shocked, like, oh, I can't believe he's saying this. More shocked that a lot of what he was saying, I feel like plays off very well off of Nietzsche. I think it plays very well off of Max Stirner. I think that there are a lot of schools of thought, I'll say, that I was already into, that he plays very well in with. Not to say that he doesn't bring very unique things to the table. He most certainly does. And he has, as you discover in the second book, he really has a central focus on the concept of love, which I think is, any philosopher that doesn't see that, or someone espousing psychology, I think is going to be off the mark. You can't help it but be off the mark. I think if you don't see that as like one of the central points, if not the central point of existence.
Certainly a driving force for many psychological phenomena.
Yeah. So now, again, these two books do a reintroduction of Adler's work. And again, they do try to condense it a bit. I have many questions. Like, there are strange things that get laid out in this book. In fact, speaking of strange, so the one, it's done as a, would you call that? That's not a dialectic. It's done where
it's a dialogue.
It is a dialogue
between an old man and a young boy.
Right. Which is similar to how, Plato would write, varying dialogues, how Socrates would get passed down and so on. And it's done that way on purpose. Okay. And I get it. I give it credit for not spending a lot of time on analogies, because I really get annoyed when philosophers rely upon analogies. I get it that they can be useful, but proof by analogy is not proof. In my opinion. And I don't think that's just an opinion, but regardless, the narrator for the older guy is the same narrator that did the audiobook for Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, which I reviewed a few episodes back on Sovryn Tech. And so that was really weird, because all I'm thinking is post-apocalypse the whole time that I'm listening to these books, and they're about this, beautiful, ultimately beautiful stuff. But yeah, I do have questions. I think there are some unfortunate statements that get made in these books that I think need extrapolation. But before I, as it were, crucify Alfred Adler, I'm willing to dive deeper, because what he does have to say is so wildly compelling.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can crucify him. He really speaks truth to a lot of things that I haven't heard many other philosophers or psychologists talk about.
Yeah, and he also has a very strong stance against war, like we were just talking about. And I think that, just look up some of the quotes from him about war, and you're just like, yeah, if you can get that, that's another thing where you're on point. Like, okay, you're interesting me. If you are claiming that war is inherently, I'll just say, a terrible thing that should not be engaged with, and is also not necessary. Damn right. Let's go. What do you got? What else you got to say, Daddy? And I'm there. So yeah, those two books for Adler, I'll stop at those. I've been reading some other things that are perhaps a little even wilder, but I'll stop with those two, which was, very just fascinating reads. And a lot to explore, and stuff that I will probably end up integrating. So I'll put that out there.
I have to say, the most beautiful part of that book, when I was reading The Courage to be Disliked, was when, in the discussion between the man and the old man and the younger boy, was that he started to describe what the title actually is. You know,
right?
What the courage to be disliked really means.
Yes,
and I felt so understood as a person when he was talking about that and the concept of freedom and how they relate.
It is a powerful statement that directly gets made, is that freedom is the courage to be disliked.
Right. Like, as social beings, we want to have loved ones. We want to have people close to us, but we have to be ourselves.
Right. And that's where I say that it fits in so well with like Nietzsche or Stirner, in the idea that, you know, you can't have anything else. I mean, you can if you want, but you're not really you if anything else is really if anyone else or social pressures or mores or whatever are in any way influencing you. You have to have the courage to be despised in your own time. Otherwise, you're never going to taste real freedom. So again, I mean, brilliant guy, no doubt about that. And even if I ever poke holes in any of his ideas, there's still wonderful things to pull from it. It's absolutely worthwhile, I think, for anyone to read. I know you enjoyed it a lot. I mean, yes. Are you basically an Adlerian now? Are you? No.
I wouldn't say I'm a follower, like a culty adherent or anything like that, but I certainly do love some of the things that he said, and I think they speak very well of his psychology, and certainly makes me want to explore further. And after I listened to it, I was gleaming. I was so happy. I
noticed.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful book.
Yeah, I mean that's part of what inspired me to like, okay, I gotta read this. I gotta know. So yeah, brilliant stuff. And no matter if you disagree with it or not, I mean, I really think you're going to get something out of reading. And again, they're not long. You will get something out of reading these. And apparently, these books are repopularizing Adler's ideas. And anytime you can, get people thinking, even at those core levels again, only a good thing in my book. So anyway, I think we'll take a little break.
Sounds good.
Then we'll come back and we'll talk about what's happening on the Bird app.
Well, you'll talk about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a conversation around it. And then actually you've got a great story. We're going to get into that as well. And then we'll talk about some fun stuff towards the end of the show. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, is Sovryn Tech not enough for you? Well, let me tell you about something you'll never get enough of. No, I mean it. We're talking about a radio show and podcast that goes all night long, 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night, 365 days a year, and has been going since the early aughts, baby. I am talking about none other than Free Talk Live. It's the show you control. That's right. It's an open phones call-in show that is ready for you. And if you're worried that your voice isn't going to get heard, don't be. We are talking about the only libertarian radio show stateside. And not only that, it's also the number 26 talk show in the United States. Start listening now and go ahead and hit that massive back catalog at freetalklive.com. The Golden Stallion guarantees a good time, and you might even find some episodes with me on them when you do. That's freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
The main story.
Ooh, so it was, let's see, we're getting in a home workout earlier today.
Yeah, just a few short hours ago.
Yeah, it was about, I want to say it was, because when I saw it, I noted the time. Okay, what we're about to talk about here with the old Twitter. Now, I am active on Twitter. It's the only social platform that I can basically stomach, and even that really barely. I mean, I like engaging with people in the Sovereign Tech Telegram group. I have a good time with that because it's a lot more personable and personal, and I don't have to deal with the blue check marks, as it were, which that's, if you're like famous, you get a blue check mark, right? If you're verified or whatever. And usually those people aren't worth following.
And you like reading things that make you angry. And you talk about them to me afterwards because I don't have a Twitter account.
Well, so here's the thing, and I've made this argument in the past that, I mean, Twitter has become like this is where news happens. This is where, I mean, tweets that get made, especially by the blue check marks, are about, and of course, really, these aren't valid either, but it's about as valid as anything being laid out on, the 11 o'clock news, CNN, or, on whatever journalistic institution that pretends to matter. I mean, it's become that important.
That's true. It's a major media outlet.
Yeah, right. I mean, and when you have basically, as I've said many times, when you have Slapnuts in Chief, or, the orange guy in Washington, when you have him more or less setting foreign policy, in 240 or in 250 80 characters, whatever it is, on Twitter, you kind of got to pay attention to it. I mean, you don't have to, of course. You can choose not to, and you're better out. You're probably a lot happier for it. But it is something to pay attention to, right?
Or you can just read it and say, that's the worst case of testosterone poisoning I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, well done. What is that from?
It's a quote from Babylon 5.
Yes, right. It is from Babylon 5. All right, side note. That's something else we just got done doing. We just got done watching The Long Twilight Struggle, close to the end of season 2 of Babylon 5. Look, folks, I'm just going to say this because we're probably not going to get to a Babylon 5 ad in this episode. I haven't heard, and I've watched many a show and movie with Ellen, and I have never heard her say, "What? Whoa!" And
I was like
so many times
the whole time,
especially with this episode, but over the series, just into 2 seasons. I mean, you've done that. You've reacted. I mean, you've almost gone to tears.
I did. I cried.
Folks,
my heart was pounding. I couldn't help it.
You people don't believe me that for the past almost decade that I've been saying this is the greatest show ever made. This is the greatest television show ever made, Babylon 5. Here it is. Okay. We've got, how old are you now? Do you want to say? Are you okay comfortable saying?
Well, in a month, I'll be 26.
Right. Okay. So you've got a 26-year-old here, folks, who is saying that a show from 1993 is just tearing her apart in the most beautiful ways.
Yeah, I felt crushed after this episode, actually.
Yeah.
Like, really, kind of heartbroken because it felt like the giant boot came down.
Yeah.
But there's there's life growing in the cracks. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, there it is. There's our ad for Babylon 5. Get fucking watching it, folks, if you haven't yet. And how do you get your hands on it? Go ahead and power up those torrent clients, baby. Go for it. Unless you want to get that on glorious DVD. Of course, you can do that as well. All right. So anyway, now that we're done with those side tangents, if you want, I could bleep out the age thing. But
well, most people say that it's impolite for a woman to share her age, or I guess women feel self-conscious about that or something, but I don't. I feel like I've worn my years well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And getting well, if I can say, getting hotter by the fucking day. Holy shit. And of course, part of that is the workouts we were just mentioning, I think.
We pump iron together every day.
Yeah, exactly. So I get on the Twitter, on the Bird app, the literal app, I do get notifications when certain people tweet. There are certain people, because I don't really scroll through Twitter. I know I get the idea of how to engage Twitter and keep your sanity a little more. And you do so by just, getting notifications from the accounts that you're actually interested in. And so that's what I do. One of the people that I follow, and this comes from, actually, this was said on Babylon 5, but it's not really from Babylon 5. Other humans said it previously. Some people I follow under the auspices of you keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And
yeah, of course. I mean, you want to hear what the most hated man in America has to say every day. Yeah,
exactly. So there's that idiot. I don't necessarily follow his because you can kind of find out his by proxy. But
Well, that's how I feel about all of Twitter.
That's true. And that's true for any news that actually matters.
I just know you'll tell me.
Yeah. Well, I'm a journalist, so what am I going to do? And I also work in PR. So there we go. But anyway, I do follow Jeff Bezos, and I do get notifications from Jeff Bezos. Elon Musk, I did for a while. I couldn't anymore because it's just too dumb. I mean, the things he has to say and really the things he comes up with. I mean, it's stupidity on a level that we haven't experienced, I think, in some time, because it's stupidity that comes with some fandom and real power, anyway.
It's stupidity with a motor on it.
Yeah, right. It's stupidity with a motor. I mean, yeah, Chump is an idiot, right? But he has to have other people kind of do his shit. And there's other, he doesn't actually invent anything. He's just a parasite as to where, and I don't think Elon Musk invents anything either, but he's stupidity with a motor attached. And that is a very dangerous combination. I'm not a fan. And he's welcome to come on the show and we can debate. And, I'm happy to verbally rip him to shreds.
He can even smoke a joint while he's in here. We don't care.
Sure. No, it's fine. Yeah, go for it. I mean, the conversation might start with, okay, let's have a look at your tax records. How much did you steal from the, American public to create what you have there that you're also basically funding through pre-orders, glorified Kickstarter program, which is disgusting. So, as far if he's this great businessman, I mean, anyway, sorry, I'm making jerking off motions with my hands. I got to stop. We are going to talk about Twitter. All right.
Stay on target.
Stay on target. Thank you. Steady. We got in a Jar Jar quote, man. We're going full stupid right now. So, I don't think people would believe this. You and I think we quote Jar Jar to each other more than just about any other person, any other character.
Almost every day.
Yeah, on a daily basis, we are quoting Jar Jar.
It's just we happen to find ourselves asking each other, "Are you ready?" or something, or you know. And usually I'll respond, "Ready,
ready," or steady, and the other quote that we bring up often enough. I don't know if I want to say it, but.
You should say it.
All right, fine. Look, because the world is in such shit.
And Jar Jar is such a naive character.
Yeah, and he has that quote from episode 1 where he says where he's talking to Queen Amidala. And he says, you used to think innocent people gonna die? And she responds with, I don't know, Jar Jar, but every time I say it, I always respond with, oh, yes. Yes, they are, Jar Jar. Any crisis that comes up, Oh man, it's amazing how many Jar Jar quotes you can actually use in real life. I think George Lucas might have been right. People will not understand episode 1 until 20 years later, and now we're finally starting to understand that film. But anyway, regardless, we're not here to talk about Star Wars. So we are talking about a moron. I mean, we're talking about Jeff Bezos, who is actually a shrewd businessman, who's not so much the government welfare whore as
no disrespect to whores.
No, sex workers are real workers. Elon Musk is not. I mean that. I say that with conviction. Sex work is real work, folks. So I mean no disrespect towards anything like that. But somebody who takes so much tax dollars, Jeff Bezos certainly isn't remotely as egregious as Elon Musk, as far as I understand. So anyway, Jeff Bezos made a tweet about Bitcoin. It turned out it was a lot more than Jeff Bezos that made this tweet. Now, when I saw the notification, and in my, in the Android notification bar or shelf, you can read the tweet. I'm like, wait, he's saying he's going to give away Bitcoin? Now, there have been people recently, actually one of Twitter's co-founders, I think, who has been giving out Bitcoin. He really has, as far as I understand it.
Just giving it away?
Yeah, just to get people on board with Bitcoin.
Wow.
And which damn right, and he came out with some great statements hey,
I'll take some Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, he also wanted to get people on board with Cash App, which I think is great too, because they're supportive of Bitcoin as well. And he's made statements that, well, Cash App is better than, and folks, if you want to see who and what I'm talking about, you can actually, of all things, go to my Twitter profile, and I retweeted some of it. But he's like, yeah, wow, Cash App's so much better than PayPal, and anybody that's anti-PayPal, like I'm fucking on board with that too, So anyway, but Bezos was tweeting about giving away Bitcoin and about Bitcoin. Now he wants to give back to the community and blah, 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 blah. As soon as he was tweeting, as soon as he even mentioned Bitcoin, as if somehow it existed, right? Now, I mean, I'm super supportive of Bitcoin, but here's the thing is I've talked about Bitcoin for about a decade now. And I have repeatedly said, and I've gotten so much shit from the Bitcoin community, but 10 years later, I'm still right, that Amazon will never, ever deal in Bitcoin. They have no interest in it. They absolutely fucking not. If it doesn't come out of Labs 123, they don't want to touch it. And so as soon as I saw the tweet of Bezos talking about Bitcoin, I'm like, no, his account got hacked. I mean,
you said that.
Right. I mean, instantly, it was a little around 5 o'clock, between 5 and 5:15 that I saw it. And I instantly said it to you while we were working out. I think I was changing the song. I was putting on something different by Beast in Black.
Manowar.
Or Manowar. Yeah, we did listen to Manowar as well. I mean, as you
They're
do.
both awesome.
Fuck yes. You even wear a Manowar shirt.
Yeah.
It says Born with a Heart of Steel on it. God, that's so fucking hot. That's so sexy. Anyway, I know I got it for you, but still, it's sexy that you wear it. But it's so great. Anyway, so Bezos, wishing that, never mind. Bezos, let's stay on target. He made this tweet and I was like, no, his account got hacked. This is crazy. Like, because I just know there's no way that he would even pretend that Bitcoin existed. He just won't do it. And if anybody listening to this who's into Bitcoin, look, I am pro Bitcoin. I am not against Bitcoin. I am just telling you the harsh fucking realities of Silicon Valley and of Amazon, who I've been right about over and over again for 10 years, long before any tech journalist. And I knew it. And so then I go looking into it, and then I notice in trending on Twitter is hacked. Like, oh, what's this? And the story is that Bill Gates got hacked. I mean, there were a slew of blue checkmark accounts. Elon Musk as well. Actually, speak of I don't want to call him the devil. The devil's a nice guy. Kanye, just a bunch of Apple. Even the Apple Twitter account got hacked. Okay, now here's the rub with this. Okay, and they're all saying the same thing, that they wanted to give away Bitcoin. Yeah, it's great that Bitcoin got a little extra exposure today.
Right,
that's nice. And I don't think Apple's ever even tweeted, so that was kind of amazing in and of itself. So apparently a lot of Bitcoin exchanges, which were also blue check marked, they were also hacked. Like, they were part of this hack, where they was claiming that, send us Bitcoin and we will give you Bitcoin back or whatever, I mean, it's clearly a scam.
Yeah, and that's kind of horrifying. Like, how good are these hackers to get into all of these accounts?
Well, here's the thing is that, I mean, this is the nature of centralized systems, certainly.
Or how weak is Twitter? Yeah,
well, that's a great point to bring up, and totally valid. And it brings that, yeah, it's like, wow, how did that even happen?
Right.
My greatest concern here is that these accounts, now, Twitter responded very quickly to this. Ironically, I have dealt with companies where their Twitter accounts have gotten hacked. The response time isn't even close to the seconds, the minutes within which, and there was apparently a good 5 minutes where all blue checkmark accounts were banned from Twitter because Twitter was trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And as of this recording, there is no official statement as far as what happened. Now, some of the more particular information that's of interest is that some of the exchanges, the Bitcoin exchanges, said that they had 2FA activated, two-factor authentication, but they said they still got hacked. Now,
how does that even happen?
Right. Now, that's scary. So there are, and this is what we need to talk about a little bit. Okay. Despite the fact that the world was basically a virtual paradise for about 5 minutes because all the blue check marks were gone. Woo! I mean, talk about throw a party, In fact, some guy, I shared it on my feed as well, or on my profile as well. Like a guy said, Twitter without the blue check marks, and it showed like what the world looked like, and everything was really advanced, and people were walking amongst the trees and all this. It's like it was utopia, right? And I thought that was really great. I was like, oh, that's funny as hell. But
so,
go ahead.
Are they like tyrants or something? What's the deal with the blue check marks? Why does everyone dislike them?
Well, to speak on that, we got to talk about the 2FA thing, but I want to speak on the point you just brought up. It's a great question to ask because it's relevant to what I have been saying recently on this show. And that is that people really do, online at least, do seem to be, and if they're offline and not online, I think they inherently recognize this. People are realizing, news organizations, they're not helping anything. They're making all of these situations infinitely worse. Influencers, celebrities, they're not helping shit. They're tone deaf. They are so far off the mark, even though they're the blue check mark. They are so far off the mark in what's going on. And in fact, the response to this, people just reveling in the joy of the fact that, all the blue check marks are gone. So now we can actually talk to real fucking people, who don't just live in California or who don't live in some whatever mansion of some kind or have 20 houses,
So they're just so isolated from the rest of the world that they're very disconnected from regular life.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a great example is, even though I think this was initially shared on Instagram, these things kind of run concurrently. When Gal Gadot, when she was singing Imagine with like Will Ferrell and all these other idiots, singing John Lennon's Imagine.
Turning it into a joke?
No, they didn't turn it into a joke. The problem is that it was a response to what was happening with COVID-19.
I see.
It's a beautiful song, right? I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
It's truly beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I get what they were going for, but when you are doing that from your, 200,000 square foot fucking mansion while people are starving, losing their businesses, losing their jobs and whatever else, no, you're not helping.
It seems pretty insincere.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And people through the protests, the COVID-19, and anything else going on, I think people are. I'm not saying that here's the problem. They don't know how to constructively use this angst or these realizations. I don't think so. I'm not like feeling like, the world is going to be better, tomorrow. No, but people are really I think are finally realizing none of these people are helping. These celebrities are completely out of touch. The news is basically coming at me with complete bias. I mean, no individual can't not have bias, right? But they're just making everything worse. And if they're not just making it worse by like the fact that they're trying to get clicks, they're making it worse by even espousing falsehoods. And I think that's going on.
Certainly. I mean,
right.
I could think of an example just recently. Trump had his first rally a few weeks ago. And I was at a friend's house, and they had the television on, and we're watching this rally.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me to join them. And, I'm always curious about a sick fascination, I guess.
Yeah, it's like going to the circus.
Yeah,
every
exactly.
Once in a while. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah.
And I'm listening to Trump talk about how he went through this embarrassing experience, blah, blah, blah. And finally, like, he starts talking about how, like, the news was saying that there weren't going to be people there, but look at all the people in this stadium. And the cameras were showing the stadium, like, completely full.
Right.
Like, jam-packed.
Right.
And some people were wearing masks, some weren't. It was kind of concerning. But then after I came home, I talked to you, and you were like, you said something about how the Trump rally had barely anyone show up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not what it looked like on the news.
Right. Well, people took independent photos there of other angles that the news wasn't putting out. And it showed a fairly empty affair, a fairly empty event. And so, yeah, I mean, even within that, like, wait, what's real? We're getting two completely different stories. Yeah. And speaking of what's real, we might get into a story. I've wanted to talk about deep fakes with you for some time. I've had a story since like May that I've wanted to discuss with you. We might get into that because that plays into this whole notion. But yeah, so people are, with the blue check marks, They're just like, yeah, these aren't even real people, and also they're probably afraid of losing, I don't know, backers and advertisers and whoever the fuck else. And folks, let's be really clear here. These influencers and whoever else, and it's not just on Instagram, it's also on Twitter. If you've got a blue check mark, there's a pretty good bet that there's some money on the line on every single tweet that you make. If it's The Rock doing for 2 years a low key subconscious campaign about tequila, and then suddenly, years later, oh, gee, he has a tequila company. Wow, that wasn't in the works for fucking ever. I mean, they do this, right? And so yeah, getting rid of the blue check marks, a lot of people feel like, wow, okay, finally, there's real people here. I mean, there's still plenty of bots that aren't blue check marks, right? And they're not real people, but regardless, that's the situation there. So I can see why people were celebrating.
So I guess I'm curious, how do you think it would be possible for an account to be hacked that had two-factor authentication activated? Okay,
well, so let's break this down. So there are 3 ways on a Twitter account since 2018 that you can authenticate, or that you can do 2FA. We'll just say that, 2FA. Okay, that's second-factor authentication. And that one is that you can do it through SMS. Bad idea. Right? Because it's easy enough, and this might be part of the key to this. SMS, you can basically hijack someone's phone number, okay? And then you can get access to their SMS messages.
Is that how all these spam calls get made, with local numbers?
No, that's a different technology. So okay. That's
sorry if I sound thick.
No, not at all, not at all. No, there's a conversation to have around that, but that's different. So this is where, like, basically what I'm talking about is a person would call up AT&T, and these are things that I have dealt with clients. They will call up AT&T and pretend to be you. Okay. And you'll give them just enough information or whatever. And then AT&T will say, okay, that's you. We'll port your phone to your new device. And that's basically how it works. And it's worse in our age of where one phone number may be accessible to multiple devices. I've talked about this over the years on the show. Like where you could pick up your phone on your smartwatch, right? So you having one more device that your phone needs to go to, AT&T doesn't see that as strange. Well, of course you do. Aren't you bought into the slavery? I mean, aren't you bought into the stupidity? I mean, aren't you bought into the modern world that Silicon Valley is forcing upon you? And well, anyway, so that might be the key to how they did it if there was still 2FA listed, because I didn't see where anybody said here. Let's talk about the other two. The other 2 ways that you can have a second factor authentication is you can use an app like the Google Authenticator, Microsoft's Authenticator, LastPass Authenticator, where it gives you a one-time PIN that's good for about 30, 60 seconds, whatever. Okay. And you have to put that PIN in with the amount of time, and then it will recognize it. The key will recognize it, on Twitter servers or on the service, whatever, with whatever service you happen to do this. This one's a little more popular. Not to say that there isn't a way to cheat that one as well, but regardless, like that's one way to do this. Or that's the second way to do this. The third way is you can use a YubiKey, which you're familiar with those, Ellen. I mean, you see me carrying mine around all the time. And this is the part that bothers me, regardless of how it happened, even if they had 2FA activated. And I hope that Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, who's supposedly the most brilliant fucking man on the planet, okay, I hope that they had 2FA activated. I mean, I'm still reeling from the fact that the Bezos leaks between him and his new lover could have been through WhatsApp, his use of WhatsApp. It's like, wait, you have all the money in the world and you use WhatsApp to talk to people? What the fuck is wrong with you? Again, speaks to the fact that these people are morons. But anyway, I mean, look, folks, if I had Bezos' money, I wouldn't have a phone. Like I'd never pick up a smartphone again if I had that kind of money.
Right. This really concerns me. Like, these are the wealthiest people in America,
right,
or the most influential, And they're using like the same technology as everyone else, the same apps. They're leaving themselves vulnerable when they have so much to protect.
Yeah. Yeah. So a part of me wonders if, so I'm bothered if they didn't even have 2FA activated, which is most likely the case here, is that these were accounts. There was some, I mean, in fact, I don't entirely understand all of the behind the scenes operations with Twitter, but a part of me wonders if all the blue check marks have their own server and that's the one that, somebody got access to. I mean, actually the most likely is that there was an employee at Twitter who said, basically, who had a bad day and said, you know what, that's enough. And they just, because people,
they went rogue.
They went rogue. And because here's the thing is that people sent money to these Bitcoin addresses. Some people did, as far as I know, that did occur. And I mean, this goes to talk about, the problem of, appeal to authority. Well, there's a fucking issue here, right? Which is even crazier that they're involved with Bitcoin and they still, buy into, well, if Bezos says it, it must be real. How much you've missed, how little you even understand of the own technology that you're sending with. But anyway, so those are the most likely scenarios, is that these people didn't have 2FA, which that should be terrifying.
Okay. It is.
And that maybe it was a Twitter employee. Now here's the thing. And I don't, this is something that people are going to be tracking for a while because we need to get answers on this one. If it's SMS, I can see how it happened. If they had 2FA on and it was SMS, I could see how this went down, how these numbers might have been faked or something like that. Like I can imagine scenarios where that could have happened. If it was 2FA through an authenticator app, that becomes a little more troubling. How this was possible. And I'm going to guess that it wasn't. I'm going to guess that it didn't happen that way because frankly, a lot of this stuff gets done through like assistants, right? Like the people themselves usually don't tweet. It's done by assistants. And those assistants need to have access to the phone number, perhaps, that could get the 2FA. That's why the phone number part of this is, I think, the most likely. This also doesn't speak well of Bitcoin exchanges. That should terrify the fuck out of people. Okay. I am ultimately bothered that even people like Elon Musk, like Bill Gates, like Jeff Bezos, like go down the fucking list. I am most bothered that these people aren't using YubiKeys or something like a YubiKey, be it the Google Titan key or whatever. They're not using. We have such fantastic security available with hardware devices, that work with FIDO. I'm just baffled that they're not doing this, that they're not taking their security this seriously. And this, just like when we found out that supposedly Jeff Bezos's WhatsApp account got hacked. What this says about the powers that be, what it says about they, them, those, what it says about the people that we think are really running the show, say like a Jeff Bezos or a Musk or whatever, is terrifying. And in fact, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to it, but we've wanted to review the movie Brazil. One of the key concepts behind the movie Brazil that I think is actually something worth really thinking about is that, really like the machine that is society has just become so top heavy, like has become so complex that it's eating itself and failing itself constantly. Right. I mean, it is like in the movie Brazil, it's as simple as a fly falling into the typewriter, and instead of Tuttle, it's Buttle. And that there's not actually anything nefarious going on in the world. It's just that, I mean, the people on top are nincompoops.
And the organization is so cumbersome.
Right. It's like a Sony Pictures situation where like, no, it was just so fucking big. Of course it got hacked. You can't secure something that's that large. And so it just raises a lot of questions. It's funny, in and of itself. But then, when you start to think critically about it, we either have massive security problems that we're not aware of that has to do with authenticator apps. There are massive security problems with Twitter. And also, or maybe there's problems somehow with, like with FIDO2, but I don't know exactly how that's possible on a remote, because if these authentication systems are put in correctly by Twitter, you can't access the account without that physical fucking key. And there's no way, or I would hope, there's no way that somebody stole all the blue check marks, stole all of their YubiKeys. Like that couldn't have happened. I mean, that's a crime spree where I guess the YubiKey would actually be an important thing to grab, but I mean, I would be grabbing so much more. If you're able to get that close to grab a physical device out of their fucking pockets, this is terrifying on so many levels that this was possible. But depending on how this happened, it's terrifying in many different ways. Now, in one way, it's actually hopeful, because here's the thing: if all the morons up top don't understand security, like the people that say, listen to this show, and maybe engage and do the things that I espouse. Oh yeah. We can really lock shit up away from these people. We really can live in the cracks away from these fucking people. And that becomes a message of, I hate this word, but that becomes a message of hope. It's like, oh, we can escape because these idiots don't know what they're doing, but we do, but I don't know. It really depends on what the answer is here. But this is a massive event, because the ramifications of what's going on here, whatever the answer is, it's not good, other than the hope that, we can at least secure ourselves, maybe. So, but I mean, the worst thing that could come out of this is, no, we used the YubiKey and someone still hacked our account. Fuck. I mean, that would suck. Like, I don't know how that would happen, but that'd be the worst news I could get.
Not even possible, though.
I just don't see how it's possible. Not remotely. You can do exploits with YubiKeys, and there have been fixes on them. Even like Tails has been explicit about them, and operating systems have. You can create exploits where you could exploit basically a FIDO key locally, okay, at the device. But remote code, I haven't seen that yet, at least not to my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, what do you got?
I'm just thinking, like, the 2FA with using your phone number, like an SMS message, for example. That is so easy and so common. Yeah. I feel like that must be it. For that number of really big influencers to be hacked, especially considering that it's their assistants doing a lot of the work for them, or even if they are doing it themselves. I just don't see how all of these people would have YubiKeys. Like, my guess is it's the SMS.
Yeah. I'm leaning on that, or as an employee. I mean, and fuck, maybe there's a way that Twitter, has it so that they can access accounts even if there is 2FA activated.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Possibly.
I mean, I imagine Twitter must somehow have the ability to because you can turn off 2FA, but usually to do that, you have to prove it by putting in a 2FA code to turn it off, right? But maybe Twitter's just got a backdoor way where they can just turn it off from, server side, and then it doesn't matter. Again, any of these answers really suck, unless it's just the stupidity of these people, which that doesn't,
it's possible they don't even have 2FA.
Yeah. Again, the Bitcoin exchanges are claiming they did. Of course, do you believe them? Anybody in Bitcoin who's been in there long enough knows better than to trust or to believe everything that comes out of the mouth of a Bitcoin exchange. So I'm not going to say that necessarily I believe them, but that's the evidence as it stands. They're claiming that they did have it set up and it still happened. Of course, I could imagine that they would say that just to mitigate responsibility, and reaction. So I don't know, but this is easily, just like the WhatsApp story, I think, with Bezos is a big deal. This is one of the biggest stories of 2020, potentially, because how did this happen?
I guess we'll have to wait for Twitter's statement.
Yeah, I mean, am I going to believe them? I don't know. I mean, this is really going to be interesting.
They might not even say that much.
Yeah, I mean, but I think they've got to respond. Otherwise, they're going to start losing people because security researchers are going to lose their shit over this, that's really all it takes is enough security researchers to come out and say, no, you need to stop using Twitter. We don't know what's going on here, and that would be enough to get the right people off of there, I think. So, and then if Twitter fucked up and they don't appease the celebrities, I mean, then you're really screwed because then they're not going to be on it at all, right? Because it's their quote unquote good name, So yeah, this is a big deal. No matter how simple the reality of what happened is, this is a huge deal. So anyway, I don't really have anything else to say on it, but I mean, any thoughts that you wanted to share on it or?
I don't know. I mean, this is why I don't like using social media in general, because these things do happen. I mean, I've had my Facebook account hacked by bots before.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
And the fewer accounts you have, the easier it is to manage.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess I would be interested to know what the truth is, and I can't wait to hear what your research has to say about what the outcome of this is, whether it was Twitter's fault or the user's fault or who knows.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely, this is something I'm going to be keeping a very, very close eye on, and we'll definitely talk about whatever we happen to find out on the show in pretty short order. I mean, basically, as soon as there's a statement of some kind, I'll probably get behind the mic and start recording. Because again, I mean, this is really a big deal. I know I keep saying it, but you got to get it in your heads that no matter how simple the answer to this, there's a problem, and it's a big one. Like any way you slice this, whether it says something about Twitter or security practices or society. So, really, what I think the worst part is, though, actually.
What is it?
About Twitter? The worst part is how long most people spend staring at their screen, fucking reading all of that fire hose.
Oh, what a tragedy. You're right. That is the worst part.
But interestingly, and this is something I take pretty seriously, but interestingly, you recently came upon a story that has to do with what seems to be a very simple way. And folks, this is no advertisement whatsoever. I am amazed by this. I take vision very seriously, and I think we all certainly understand we stare at screens way too much, and it is killing our eyes.
Yes.
But you found a story that I thought was absolutely fascinating. And what I'm going to do here, this is, some people in the radio industry call this career suicide, but this will be like maybe the 4th or 5th time that I've ever let anybody like really take lead on an entire segment of my show. But
it's career suicide.
Yeah, you happen to be more than enough to handle it. Of course, I mean, hell, you come on. Your show was tremendous. You had your own podcast.
Thank you. I've actually had many.
Yeah, well, right. Yeah, that's true.
I think you're referring to Illumination Hour.
Yes. One of the most brilliant shows I've ever heard. And I mean that. And I'm not the only one. Other Sovereign Tech listeners who I turned them on to that said the same damn thing.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I know you've got it. That's never a worry.
Wow, this is exciting. I've never taken lead on Sovereign Tech.
Yeah, I'm trying to like make you nervous. No.
All right, well, let's make sure this isn't career suicide for you.
Well, anyway, I trust you with my life and my love, so I trust you with my show. So, all right, give me this story. Break it down, read it, let's do it.
Okay, well, everyone's heard about how blue light is keeping you awake at night because, you stare at your screen for too long before you go to bed. You bring your phone into bed with you. You're not going to be able to sleep because you've been staring at blue light.
I am certainly criminal of this.
Yes, you are. I won't deny that.
Yeah, anyway, continue.
Anyway, it's your personal choice. Everyone gets to choose how much they want to stare at screens throughout the day. Well, I guess to some extent. It's not always a choice. But anyway, different light wavelengths, different frequencies of light have different properties. Mm-hmm. Humans can only see the spectrum, the visual spectrum. And each different light kind of like has different properties attributed to it
Right.
psychologically. But there's new research that's come out recently showing that red light or deep red light specifically can improve naturally declining vision.
Like just shining the red light in my face? I mean, give me the story here.
Okay.
I mean, because well, real quick, I'm thinking like these red laser pointers, and just like
right.
which they specifically say on it for those that bother to read directions. Do not point this directly at your eyes.
I know, that's what I was thinking when I read this story. It's
Okay.
like, wait, so now we can look at the lasers and it'll actually heal our eyes instead of burn our retinas?
Wouldn't that be a hell of a thing if you found out actually this was the cure, not the disease? But anyway, continue.
Well, I get the sense that lasers lasers are designed to be really high intensity.
Yes.
They have a large concentration of photons in a small
Right.
area. So probably not a laser is what this study's referring to.
Yeah.
But anyway, the synopsis says, looking at 670 nanometer red light specifically for 3 minutes a day can significantly improve cone color contrast sensitivity, or the ability to detect colors, and rod sensitivity, which is the ability to see in low light. This is according to a new study published in the Journals of Gerontology, Series A.
Uh-huh.
So it has to be specifically that wavelength, 670 nanometers.
Okay.
So the story goes on. It says, retinas age faster than other organs with a 70% ATP reduction over life and a significant decline in photoreceptor function. So ATP is essentially the energy that your cells use it's like the gasoline for the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to reduce it to like 70% lower levels, that's pretty incredible, really.
Sure, that's substantial.
It is. It explains a lot of like vision problems that people have as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've said this is important to you. I think it's incredibly important. You have to see to survive. And for people like us who have to wear glasses to see far away, it's pretty appealing to imagine that we could just stare at screens and get our eyes better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was always told that like eating carrots would help improve my eyesight, but I eat carrots enough, and I don't feel like it's really helped my eyes.
I used to hear that all the time too. It's the vitamin K; it lets you see at night, right? I mean, I've heard that kind of stuff. But okay, well,
the Journals of Gerontology, that's a reputable source.
sure.
So that's what makes me want to believe this article. All right, so it goes on to say, as you age, your visual system declines significantly, particularly once over the age of 40. Your retinal sensitivity and color vision are both gradually undermined, and with an aging population, this is an increasingly important issue, said Professor Glenn Jeffrey, a researcher at the Institute of Ophthalmology at the University of College London. To try to stem or reverse this decline, we sought to reboot the retina's aging cells with short bursts of long-wave light. In humans around 40 years old, cells in the eye's retina begin to age, and the pace of this aging is caused in part when the cell's mitochondria, whose role is to produce energy carried by adenosine triphosphate, which is ATP, molecules, and to boost cell function, also start to decline. So that was a really long run-on sentence that tried to include way too much information at once. So I'm just going to break
like a
it down
science journal. Okay.
a little bit more. So it's saying after humans reach 40 years old, their retina cells begin to age at a more rapid pace.
Mm-hmm.
And this is caused by the mitochondria, which produce energy in your cell, essentially turn the ATP into useful energy. They no longer produce as much ATP. So you're not like getting as much energy to those cells, which need to be replenished in your retina. Like the cells in your body don't just exist forever. They're constantly dying and dividing. So it's important for your cells to have a steady stream of ATP because that's the energy that keeps them living and dividing.
So is this suggesting that this is only helpful for older people then? Like,
Yeah, it'll actually say that specifically
continue.
later.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, mitochondrial density is greatest in the retina's photoreceptor cells, which have high energy demands. As a result, the retina ages faster than other organs with a 70% ATP reduction over life, causing a significant decline in photoreceptor function as they lack the energy to perform their normal role. The scientists built on their previous findings in mice, bumblebees, and fruit flies, which all found significant improvements in the function of the retina's photoreceptors when their eyes were exposed to 670 nanometer deep red light.
Imagine the light in the eyes of the fly.
Yeah, they've got those compound lenses on their eyes. It'd be like a disco ball.
I can see it all now, man. I can just picture the fly. All right, go.
Mitochondria have specific light absorbance characteristics influencing their performance. Longer wavelengths, spanning 650 to 1000 nanometers, are absorbed and improve mitochondrial performance to increase energy production, Professor Jeffrey said. The retina's photoreceptor population is formed of cones, which mediate color vision, and rods, which provide peripheral vision and adapt vision in low dim light. The study involved 24 people aged between 28 and 72 who had no ocular disease. So granted, that's a pretty small population.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this study is going to be reproduced many times because it's a very easy study to do.
Sure.
But yeah, so far it's only been done on humans in very small populations.
Okay.
All participants' eyes were tested for the sensitivity of their rods and cones at the start of the study. Rod sensitivity was measured in dark adapted eyes with pupils dilated by asking participants to detect dim light signals in the dark, and cone function was tested by subjecting identifying colored letters, by subjects identifying colored letters that had very low contrast and appeared increasingly blurred, a process called colored contrast. And you've probably seen these tests before. They're like, it'll show a picture that has a lot of circles in it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are like just slightly different colored, and they pop out at you if you can detect the difference in colors.
Right.
So the participants were then given a small LED torch, or a flashlight for us Americans, and were asked to look into its deep red 670 nanometer light beam for 3 minutes a day for 2 weeks.
Okay.
They were then retested for their rod and cone sensitivity. The researchers found that 670 nanometer light had no impact in younger individuals. But in those around 40 years and over, significant improvements were obtained. Cone color contrast sensitivity improved by up to 20% in some people aged 40 and over. Improvements were more significant in the blue part of the color spectrum that is more vulnerable in aging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something that's true in general. Like, men have a higher propensity for color blindness than women. And generally, it's like in the blue or green area of the spectrum.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, my understanding is that green is like the easiest on the eyes. That's always interesting that I guess that's part of color blindness.
Maybe psychologically.
yeah, maybe it is just a psychological thing. But anyway, continue, please.
Okay. So rod sensitivity also improved significantly in those around age 40, though less than color contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Our study shows that it's possible to significantly improve vision that has declined in aged individuals using simple, brief exposures to light wavelengths that recharge the energy system that has declined in the retina cells, rather like recharging a battery.
This very much reminds me of how they suggest that reading can, in layman's terms, keep your mind young, because it keeps, I'm trying to remember what the chemical is that it keeps running, or that reading can, because
it keeps your neurons firing.
Yeah, because after 25 it tapers off, and reading, just that simple act can just keep it, keep it firing. I'm making sounds. I don't know why I am on this show, but anyway.
Because your neurons are literally firing.
Yeah. But this is as simple as just a red flashlight in a specific range.
Yeah. Yeah, the last paragraph says this technology is very simple and safe, using a deep red light of a specific wavelength that's absorbed by mitochondria in the retina that supply energy for cellular function. Our devices cost $15 to make, so the technology is highly accessible to members of the public.
Somehow somebody's going to patent that, or somehow Big Eyeglass is going to keep this from being a thing.
There's no way they can control it.
No, I know, right? Yeah.
Frankly, you could find a red light source online somewhere that's specifically 670 nanometer wavelength.
Right.
And stare at that for 3 minutes a day.
Yeah, if this is true, and for $15, why the hell not try it?
Exactly.
Right. Certainly it's got me thinking about it. Yeah, do it. What are your thoughts? Is this...
Well, I think it's very exciting. For people who struggle with their eyesight,
right,
and that are over the age of 40, it's so simple, it's so accessible, and like you said, why not do it? Also, it kind of like confirms something for me. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but whenever I see bright red light, it like stirs something in my eyes and I can't look away from it. And it's more than just a psychological thing.
It's not just like the evolutionary trait of danger.
It feels like the energetics, like something is happening.
Red light therapy is a big deal, right? Like that's a thing that people talk about, like that a lot of these optimizer guys are really into.
Well, this article kept saying over and over again, that wavelength of light activates the mitochondria to produce ATP. And that's true. It does stimulate them.
It's very interesting. I've heard, again, for $15, it might as well be free, right?
Right.
Because I know, and I've talked about this on the show. The military decades ago did research on red lights, on using like red lights for, for interfaces and so on, like in the inside of tanks and everything else. And they basically found, this is exactly what you want to do. You don't want to use anything else. You want to keep this stuff natural, etc. And I'm even thinking of like astronomy software that I use where it will have the night vision option. And what it does is it just makes your entire, like say, smartphone screen go red. That way your eyes don't have to go through the adjustment of, looking at what the app, the astronomy app is telling you is above you and actually seeing it when you pull the phone away. So, red light, there is a sensitivity or almost a lack thereof, like that the eye has for it.
Yeah. And this is it's so interesting. It's got me thinking too, like, this isn't something that I think most people would expect, but red light is actually the lowest energy light that you can visibly see.
Right.
It goes up in energy, heading from red to blue, for example. Like blue is a very high energy light source. So there's that. And then also I'm just thinking like when you're in the womb, that's all you're seeing is the red light, the light filtering through the blood and skin.
Right.
That is all red. So like during that developmental period of life, the first 9 months, all you're seeing when your eyes develop is red light.
So there's but this is basically saying, because it's not just psychological. In fact, that's kind of, that's so weird.
Yeah. Your body physically responds to it. And the mitochondria react to the red light, not just in your retinas, but everywhere in your body. Mitochondria are the same across the board.
That's wild.
I don't know what that means though. Like, I'm not sure what the real application of that would be, but this is certainly an application that I could get behind.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it, absolutely. One trick. So there's an old trick that I learned, and it's called like the 20-20-20 rule, not the 20-20, not the 80-20 rule. It's not the Pareto principle, but the 20-20-20 rule, which is every 20 minutes, like if you're looking at screens for a long time, every 20 minutes, look away at something that's 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing, and it'll save your eyes and probably your sanity too, because there's almost nothing good going on these screens. But, but regardless, that's something I try to apply, but I mean, it's so hard to pay attention to like every 20 minutes, to do something. And I mean, I think that goes a long way. And, the reason I know about it is because there's been research done on it that it's a good idea to do. But this is something, that you can just kind of remember to do. And I mean, I'm approaching 40, I'm 39. This is something you can think to do every night for a few minutes and, just before you go to bed and, bammo, I guess, like you get the advantages. What do you got?
Yeah. I was also thinking, because they mentioned in this article that they sent the participants home with an LED torch.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both have recently read a book that has to do with EMFs.
Yes.
And not that I'm necessarily concerned about the EMF portion of the LED light,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that it blinks in rapid succession. It's not like a natural source of light where it's a consistent stream. It's a constantly blinking light source. I'm just not sure how that.
Not the LED, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Does it make a difference? This is something that I hope that somebody investigates.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this study specifically, LED light source versus a consistent natural light source.
Or
Does
even
that
like an
affect...
incandescent bulb, you mean?
Well, an incandescent bulb would also blink. If it was attached to like a circuit, say, because it has AC.
Yeah.
Maybe the torches were well, anyway, that's just something that I would like to see is
what would natural
the
light
discussion of like the blinking light versus the natural light.
Yeah, so because you could take like a piece of film of some kind that, would you be able to do that? Like, could you hold up a piece of film to the sun that basically would filter out the light to where you get the exact range that you need?
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the light is a white light, it has every wavelength in it.
Right.
So if you filter out all of them except for the 650 nanometer wavelength, that would be perfect.
I mean, that's less than $15. That's 50 cents, or at least it could be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting idea. Like even that would be, I mean, that's a nice natural way of doing it, right? Like, I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just get a piece of plastic film that only transmits red light.
You see, I would have never thought of that. There's potential that needs to be taken into consideration in further research, what you're saying. That's brilliant.
It's something that I think there's been research done on that too, where
Mm-hmm.
like the flashing of lights can make you feel like nauseous or can make your eyes hurt and strain after a certain period of time.
Fluorescent bulb will give you a headache.
Yeah.
I mean, just from having to look at it.
Incandescent bulbs do the same thing.
Sure.
Anything that's attached to an AC current.
Mm-hmm.
And LEDs, I don't know what the deal is with them. They just blink.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways people see them as like the best or the least evil of lights.
They're the lowest energy.
Yeah.
They're highest efficiency, I should say.
Yeah, because they also last the longest too.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting. But this is, I mean, I love this. The idea that there's just some very simple trick, that could potentially, I mean, because I think like so many other things that we've had in the past, say 50, 60 years, I mean, we're not part of like some grand conspiracy experiment, but it feels like we are ultimately in an experiment of evolution and civilization, where I think a lot of the things that we've introduced in the past 50, 60 years, maybe a few more decades down the line, we're going to start paying the piper on that. Like what we've allowed. I mean,
not many, there hasn't been, like, some of this technology hasn't existed long enough for real long-term studies to be done on the effects of humans.
Right. I mean, we already know about Technic. We already, I mean, like there's lots of little things we already know that are health problems based around the technology, even just something like the smartphone. But like the prevalence of staring at screens and everything, I think sooner or later, I mean, and we've known this with televisions really, but I think the prevalence is really going to change. I'm just very concerned about the eyesight. I know this sounds kind of cliche, but like I'm genuinely concerned about the eyesight of the people of the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
So anything that can help with that, especially that only costs $15, hey, let's do it. So, what else you got on this? Anything?
Well, that was the entire article.
Yeah.
I just hope that, like, if you're a person that's 40 years old and you want your eyesight to be better, it doesn't even have to be bad. If you just want it to be better, give it a try and let us know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, in your opinion, this can't hurt, right? Like, I mean, there's...
No, unless the light is like so blindingly powerful that it really burns your retinas.
Yeah.
like, don't stare into the laser.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So here's the test. Point it at a black balloon. And if the balloon pops after about a minute, don't point it at your eyes. Otherwise, go ahead and point it at your eyes. Anyway, you used to have fun with lasers. You just put the black dot on the balloon, or if it's an entirely black balloon, then that, anyway, you can pop a balloon
That's
that way with a
amazing.
laser.
I didn't realize you could do that.
Yeah. I don't want to say go to YouTube, but go to YouTube and check it out. I mean, but I used to, at last tech company that I worked at, a lot of times we'd have a little too much free time. And if we weren't playing Star Wars Jedi Academy, we were pretending we had lightsabers in our hands and blowing up black balloons. So, I mean, that's a totally normal thing for a 30-year-old to do. Come on.
Just hold the laser at the same point for 60 seconds.
Oh, that's awesome. Anyway, again, I think that's wonderful and a great takeaway. I love it when people can take away something they can do that's actionable. Right?
Yes,
something actionable away from the show. So I love that.
And it might actually improve your health.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So that's great. I don't think we're just going to have you on again, Ellen, because I don't think we're going to be able to get into the deep fakes story that I wanted.
Too bad.
Yeah, it's relevant really to much of what we've been talking about, but I think we'll have to save that, but we will get into that conversation. I promise we're going to get into that. And you had a bunch of other stories too that were awesome. I mean, that penguin, pooping 6 feet.
Yeah, who doesn't want to hear about penguin shit?
Why not? I mean, they can shit 6 feet. They throw up, into each other's mouths. I mean, these creatures are amazing. But instead, why don't we take a little break? We'll switch it up, and we'll talk about some fun stuff for the rest of the show. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech.
Woo.
Hello, Sovrynati. As you know, Sovryn Tech proudly no longer puts content behind a paywall and makes thousands of hours and episodes available to you totally for free. But if you feel that stirring in your cockles or that special feeling in your heart, I beseech you, nay, I implore you to help the show out by donating. Frequenting our sponsors is key, but donations from listeners like you has always made the show go round and round. You can go to sovryntech.com to set up an automatic monthly donation, or you can donate via the Bitcoin address in the show notes. And now you can even donate with the Cash app at cash.app and use the money tag Sovryn Tech. So many ways to help out the show, and I'm honored by all of it, allowing us to build and be the future. Now, let's get back to the show.
Now entering the gaming grid. The latest gaming news, reviews, and retro culture, as only the man of tomorrow can deliver. And here's your host, Brian Sovryn.
Something that I have had an absolute joy and that people have loved. The first time we did it was when you were on last. I've never really had anybody co-host with me on the gaming grid, or during game talk often enough. I mean, sometimes I'd have somebody in talking about video games with me, but we like to lighten things up towards the end of the show because it seems like we're often talking about such serious matters throughout the other or the first half or hour and a half of it. And so I thought we could lighten things up here a bit, but people loved it when you were talking on the last gaming grid, when you were talking the last time we did this segment.
No kidding.
Yeah, I actually heard from quite a few people that they went out and bought both Age of Empires 2 and Roller Coaster Tycoon. And
Okay,
so now,
well, don't blame me for your loss of life over this.
well, at the very least, we've given them something where they're not going to lose their eyesight over this now. So, so that's all right.
No, you can play the game for 5 hours straight, but just go stare at the red light
Yeah.
3 minutes afterwards.
Well, anyway, we were playing this and we were doing you and I were doing some multiplayer here and there on a Friday night, after the gym, folks. We have our priorities in order here.
Yes.
Okay? And I'm not kidding either. It was after like 2.5 hours at the gym. Because Planet Fitness opened back up, which, boy, that's been an experience.
Oh, yeah.
We could talk
it's
about
very
that,
strange.
but maybe we'll save that for another episode. But anyway, so we were playing Age of Empires 2. You were kicking my ass, basically from one side of the continent to the other, in this game in multiplayer. And
I do.
Yeah, as you do. And we even added in like computer players and everything. And you were still just wiping the floor with everybody. You are quite the devious strategist. I mean, you have a streak in you.
Thank you. Well, I'll give you another tip here.
Mhm.
So last time I was on, I mentioned how it's very important to start your economy rolling with plenty of villagers and never let them be idle. Work them like dogs.
Right.
The second piece of advice that I want to give, and I really have to give credit to Age of Empires for doing this, they place such an importance on research, on technology and improvements. You really have to pay attention to that. Yeah. Because
you got to climb that technology tree.
Yeah. If you're not adding to your body of knowledge as you go through the game, you're going to be wiped out very quickly.
I've learned this from you because I am very much, and honestly, through much of life, not just in video games, I'm very much a brute force guy. I mean, yes. I am not the kind of person who would invent the saw that would cut the hole in the wall. I am the person who would walk through the wall. And I mean, burst through it like the Kool-Aid man, was, oh yeah. I mean, that is me, and so I've learned this, you've taught me this, that I can't just win. I mean, it's not like StarCraft where you can do a little Zerg rush and you can just have all your peons, go and like kill the other peons before anybody builds any militia, right? But anyway, I've learned a lot from you on some of this stuff. Not that I was bad at these games in the first place, but certainly I've learned you fine-tuned my strategies.
Thank you. Well, I am an engineer. I love technology and I love efficiency.
Absolutely, and it shows. But I have a little theory around this, is that I think, and I'll be kind, I'll put it this way.
Oh, don't worry about hurting my feelings.
No, not your feelings, but maybe others.
Okay.
Anti-authoritarians, I'll say it that way. Okay, instead of using the other A word. I feel like anti-authoritarians have such an understanding of how power and force works that they are often really good at these games because they get it. They're like, oh, no, I know how to be ruthless. Or, no, I know. That's just ink on a page. There are no rules,
Diplomacy can change at any time.
Exactly. Ink on a page. That's all it is. And so I have a theory about that,
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we'll do some little N of 1 on or N of 2 on that. But anyway, so we were playing these games though, and eventually I just, was so embarrassed and ashamed that I said, I was like, no, can we be allies? Instead, because I'm just not going to beat you, or at least not right now.
Well, I could also tell, it's not going to be fun for either of us if I'm just killing you at the beginning of every game.
Oh, you get pleasure out of that.
Well, it gets old after a time.
After the things we do in the bedroom? Sorry. No.
I don't want revenge for any of it.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with vengeance. It's simply domination. And power.
Well, there we go.
Anyway, it was a joy to be an ally with you.
Yeah.
It was a very different experience.
Yes. Now, And it was a lot of fun, actually. It was really cool. Like, I would do my measly thing, and I'd get to do like a lot of the fun stuff when we were allies, because like I get to come up from behind.
Yeah.
I like to do that. I like to sneak in, or I get to come up with really interesting strategies, like where, oh wait, I can actually build like a whole other town center across the river, and then my other town center can just be a decoy. This is great. I love this sort of, but I only get to do that because you're there, in full force, making sure nothing stops us,
Yeah, I've got like ships patrolling the waterways.
Right. So I get to engage in a little more stealth, which believe it or not, as much as I'm a brute force guy, I actually like, those kind of creative pursuits. Anyway, so that was fun. But ultimately I was like, you know what? It's like, there's this game that I played, and it's in the Age of Empires series, that I would love for you to try out, Ellen. And it's Age of Mythology. So I had you go through the horrendous process of opening a Steam account.
Oh, yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, that was a pain in the ass. And
which I've never used Steam before. I guess you've had your account for what, a decade?
Over forever. Yeah, it's around there.
I didn't even know Steam existed that long ago.
Yeah. Anyway, it's both the beauty and the bane of one's existence. But anyway, so Age of Mythology is not on GOG, otherwise we would have gone there. Fortunately, the summer sale was going on, so I got this for you for a song. I already had it, but Age of Mythology came out in 2002. It got re-released as an expanded edition in 2014. And amazingly, Microsoft is still updating the fuck out of this game. Even as the expanded edition, it's been out already for 5 years. In fact, the latest update came out like on the 29th of June.
Wow.
Yeah, I
mean, it is an amazing game.
It is, right. They're major updates. Now, I love this game for a bunch of different reasons. I like getting to play. I mean, it's interesting to play the Atlanteans, the Egyptians, the ancient Chinese, the Vikings, and so on. I mean, there's a lot of fun in that. The storyline with the character of Arkantos is amazing in this game. The single player is worth it alone, and they lifted a lot of elements, I think, from the Command and Conquer series, where like there are missions that are not straight up grinding and whatever with RTS, or not straight up, using the meat grinder and collecting resources. There's different missions in it that have different goals, and objectives that go outside of the traditional RTS, which is what I loved about Command and Conquer back in the day. So that makes it fun. We haven't gotten to doing any multiplayer in this yet.
Not yet, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, well, part of the problem is that, so, I mean, how would you rate this game? Let's say that first.
How would I rate it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's beautiful. The stories, again, as you said, are majestic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fascinating how there are like so many different characters with like really unique moves and traits.
Yeah, because you have hero characters.
Right.
This. Yeah.
Yeah, and even the technology, that part is really interesting too, because when you advance from like the Stone Age to the Bronze Age or whatever,
mm-hmm.
You get to choose which major god you worship.
Right.
They become like your patron god.
Yeah.
And that gives you access to different technology trees. So I find that really fascinating. And also, one thing that makes this game especially unique compared to Age of Empires is that after you win a scenario, you get to see like an animated video of like whatever conversation is happening that moves the story along.
Yeah, when you're doing single player, yes.
Yes.
Right. And they use the in-game engine, which I love them for having the balls to do that, because it keeps the narrative flow going, and you really feel like in many ways you're playing like a full-on movie and story.
Yeah.
As to where with Age of Empires 2, it pulls you away, shows like a graphic and like some scrolling words and everything. And I mean, it's amazing. Like in some of these cutscenes, I mean, it's funny. Like I think the jokes land, which is remarkable to consider that a real-time strategy, especially that isn't Warcraft, is dead on hilarious. but
Right.
also very serious. Like you really invest in what's going on. Continue.
Yeah. Anyway, there's just so much to like about this game. And
Yeah.
I would give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. No, same. I think it's easily probably in my top 3 RTSs of all time. I played this a lot more than I played any of the Age of Empires games. I even played this more than Age of Empires 3, which I'm a huge fan of. But the god powers that you can get, like when you can send bolts of lightning from Zeus down on something, I mean, it adds a whole other levels of strategy to this.
Oh, it's so exciting to send a meteor shower into the town center of your enemies.
It creates a real, like, because I mean, that's the beauty of having like mythological characters and having like gods in it, is because anything could happen,
Right.
like at any moment, and suddenly your guy could just get wiped out, or and you're done.
Or you come up against like a centaur you have to battle.
Right.
Or a minotaur.
Yeah.
Or the Anubis.
Yep, there's Anubis guards. Or you have, there's all kinds of creatures. It's
Krakens
really,
come up to the shore. You have to fend them off from attacking your docks.
I love it. I mean, Age of Empires 2 is great, and it's easily one of the greatest games ever made. I wouldn't argue against that. But I think this adds a lot of stuff into the mixture that just makes it infinitely replayable and so much fun. And I really can't wait to get involved in multiplayer with you. And I'd say the same, 10 out of 10. I mean, it's a perfect game. Everything about it. The music's, I mean, every level of production is the right moves. I love the music in it. I listen to the soundtrack actually pretty often. The storylines are genuinely, I can't even think of games outside of perhaps Wing Commander. Well, there are games with great stories, but it's just shocking how good of a story this has as an RTS. It really is surprising. So yeah, I mean, you definitely recommend people play this. What do you choose? Would you rather do Age of Empires 2 or Age of Mythology? Which do you think you have one you like better?
Oh, I don't know. That's such a tough question.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, I haven't had that many hours of game time with Age of Mythology.
That's because, I was going to bring this up earlier. We had to stop ourselves, like, because we were playing this, I mean, for hours on end, pretty nonstop. And we kind of had to say, like, okay, we got to get shit done, right?
Right.
It was, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. It's just, I've also been playing Age of Empires for years, you know?
Right.
And this I've only had access to for like a month.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's hard for me to say. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm better at Age of Empires than I am at Age of Mythology, but that's quickly changing.
Yeah, fair. Well,
the more I learn about it, the better the more confident I feel with it. And it really is, if I'm being honest, it's so much more beautiful, just in general, than Age of Empires.
Oh yeah. No, I would agree with that. I mean, just the flourish that the game has. I mean, and I get it. Age of Empires 2 is trying to be very realistic, in what they present. But that classical stuff that they show off in Age of Mythology is so stunning. You can't help but want to look at the maps, and everything going on. It is really gorgeous. Well, okay, 10 out of 10, Age of Mythology. There you go, folks. There's a little gaming grid for you. I don't know if we'll get to, well, anyway, I'll get to other games to review and other things going on. I mean, there's crazy stuff going on to talk about in the future, but Ellen, I appreciate that. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. We need to talk up some other fun stuff for people to check out. We're going to try and do some rapid fire action before I see you on the Blood Red Sands. We'll be right back with more. Hey, baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovryntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
the golden stallion doing whatever he wants to do. The climax.
It is time for the climax, where we get to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And we're basically, for dinner, you and I, we sit down. You often make an amazing dinner, Ellen.
Dinner is an event.
You make it an event.
It's a celebration.
Yes.
Making it through another day.
Yeah. We work out for an hour and a half, whatever, most days. Sometimes it's longer. And then we sit down for dinner. It's like it's time to relax from a crazy day. Well,
after working out, we're starving, and
yeah.
I love cooking. I make lots of food.
It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, so when we have dinner, it lasts a long time, long enough for us to watch an episode of Babylon 5, or sometimes even a movie.
Sometimes a movie, yeah. And the meal, I feel like the medium needs to match the meal. And so we only watch the finest films, and the finest shows. We'd never watch a dud ever.
What was the greatest movie ever? We watched it.
Battlefield Earth.
Yes.
We didn't do that over dinner. Just
no,
to be clear.
That's true. We didn't eat while we were watching that one.
Oh, I don't think we ever reviewed that.
We'll have to watch it again.
No, we can't do that. I'll listen to the audiobook a million times. The movie, no. Oh, anyway, okay. I know you're kidding, but
well, anyway, we don't watch duds of movies because you are an excellent entertainer and have the greatest collection of Blu-rays.
I mean, that's the thing, is that we really will only buy the best. But sometimes you'll watch movies that I usually feel are more of an acquired taste for myself. And I do appreciate that you have the patience with them. But a lot of times you end up loving these movies, or at least enjoying
having fun while watching them.
That's gracious.
It's like, I'll watch it once, sure.
Right. All right. So why don't I tell you what? Why don't we rapid fire some of the movies let's go through them. Some of the ones that we've watched lately. Give a ranking. Tell me what you think about it. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. Can we do it in reverse order? Where we talk about what we think about it and then give a ranking?
Sure. Okay, let's do that. All right, so let's start off with Blade.
Blade.
Yeah.
Oh wow. The vampire movie. I think we did a review of that.
Did we review that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Change. Demolition Man. With Stallone.
Yeah. That was a very fun and quirky movie.
Mm-hmm.
Unique. Yeah, very different from the dystopian future that is typicing depicted.
Sure.
We
have a cat invading the studio.
The captain is flying by.
Set him down. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, it put a comedic spin on dystopia, and Stallone is Stallone.
Yeah.
It's very action packed.
Yeah.
The man of many muscles. I would give that movie, I think I did give that movie like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that movie is very ahead of its time. Very perhaps prescient. A far better movie than it should have been.
Which I think we did review this on a previous show, too.
I don't know if we talked about Demolition Man. Did we?
I remember talking about the information kiosks.
I think we brought it up because it's like relevant to what we were discussing. But
possibly.
Anyway, okay, so 8 out of 10 on Demolition Man.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
The bad guy was really good.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes is amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Jesse Ventura was there too. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. All right, let's stick with Stallone. Judge Dredd.
Oh my gosh. That was amazing. I mean, it really did feel like a comic book movie.
Yeah.
Because the uniforms that the people were wearing was they really like popped, they were eccentric and colorful, and huge, like everything was chunky and big.
Right.
What a cool movie. I really enjoyed watching
it's cool, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the word for it, because it has such a visual style. It does pop out at you. I do think that it is a comic book movie made like the comic book, very much, or it's very close to that. There was a remake done with Carl Urban playing Judge Dredd, which was also very good, very different, but very good. I've loved this film for a very, very long time. And I think it does comic book movies much better than anything Marvel has ever produced. But go ahead, give me your ranking, or if you have other things you want to talk about with it.
I mean, again, I would give this one like an 8 out of 10. If it wasn't for that one guy, what was his name?
I know.
He was like
Schneider.
the Jar Jar Binks of that movie.
Yeah, Rob Schneider kills the film. Like,
I mean, he's just, his character doesn't fit. He's supposed to be comedic relief, but Stallone is like so cool and so serious, and
Armand Assante is great.
The film is dark.
Yeah,
I mean, there are like horrible things going on. They live in this like disgusting city that's like 100 stories tall, and he's just making jokes about everything and acting like a total wuss. I don't know. I don't know how else to say that.
I know. No,
he's like screaming the entire time. All the action sequences, he's like and just hiding.
No, he kills the film. I mean, fortunately, all the other elements are so great that you can kind of get past it.
Yeah.
But he keeps it from being a really good movie.
Yeah, it could have been like Batman. Good.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yes. Yeah. So what was the score again?
8.
I knew you'd say that. No.
I knew you'd say that.
Watch the movie and you'll get it. I'd go with an 8 out of 10 as well. I really love this movie. Rob Schneider is the weak point that keeps it from kissing a 9. I think. I think the writing's great. The actors are awesome. I mean, You've got Max von Sydow and Jürgen Prochnow working together again since Dune. I mean, there's so much great stuff happening in it, and the soundtrack. Holy shit, is that a great score? And I mean the not the lawgiver, the lawmaster, the flying motorcycles.
Yeah.
That sequence looks amazing today. It looks
absolutely amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, great film. Okay, all right, we want to go on to another one.
Sure.
We'll stick with Stallone. Cobra. Come on.
I mean that's just a typical Stallone film. It's like all explosions and fighting.
Yeah.
Very good. I mean, he does have some funny moments, which I appreciate, but it was all about the guns and the shooting and Stallone being Stallone. I thought it was fun. It was very entertaining. I have no complaints about the movie.
Right. Yeah, this is a movie I wish there is a over 2. Originally the movie was supposed to be over 2 hours. It's about an hour and a half now. There's a work print of that out there that has a lot of deleted scenes that explain more about what's going on in the film. I'd love to see that movie or that version of the film, because the villains, like the gang, I'd love to know more about their motives.
Right. They don't explain that very much.
No.
And I know Stallone can be actually an amazing writer.
Yeah.
He can go pretty deep with stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way they cut it, the whole film, it felt like it was missing that soul, and it turned into just another action movie.
There's brilliant little things in it, like even things as simple as when he's having some pizza, and he cuts the pizza with scissors.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's like, wait, what? But it's enough to go like, okay, this guy's a little off his rocker. Mm-hmm. It's such a great little visual cue. I like this movie a lot. I don't know, what did you give a rank? What do you give for a rank?
I would give this one like a 7.
7 out of 10?
Yeah, or 7.5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very fun. There's not a whole lot to the story.
Yeah.
And parts of it are very predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's the action star. He's like the one-off of the police force.
Oh, it's terribly tropey.
Yeah. And there's this woman, the love interest, where she's asking him like, why don't you have a girlfriend? And he's like, well, I guess she'd have to be a little crazy too, And there
Yeah.
she is, like, putting a bunch of ketchup on her fries, like, to the point where he's staring because it's a disgusting amount of ketchup. And that's the indicator, like, oh, she's just crazy enough to be with the guy who cuts his pizza with scissors.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a movie that I'd give a similar ranking to what you said. It really, this is one of those movies. It's a shame we did not get more. Actually, this is true for almost every Stallone film, because other than Rocky and Rambo, and yes, I know, like, you have the Expendables and Escape Plan and some other ones where he got sequels. A lot of the movies that should have had sequels that would have really worked never got sequels, and it's a shame. And this is one of them. Cobra is one where I think Cobra 2 could have been pretty badass and pretty funny. I think the same could be true for Demolition Man, even though supposedly one is getting made. Judge Dredd, oh yeah, absolutely give me a sequel to that. Now, the next one, okay, we'll do one more Stallone film. This one should have had just a butt ton of sequels, and I'm not kidding. It really should have. Tango and Cash. Yeah, I mean, this is a buddy cop movie. I get it. I mean, Cobra is somewhat of a buddy cop movie as well. But a buddy cop movie, it's Stallone and Kurt Russell. How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, it was such a fun movie.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with buddy cop movies, but this was above and beyond any of my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was not predictable. It was actually full of twists and turns.
Right.
There were some, like, really scary moments, some very sad moments.
Yeah.
There were some funny, like, just drop dead hilarious moments.
Yep.
I loved it. Honestly, I would give that one closer to a 9.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Because I've loved this movie for so long. I mean, since I was like a little kid. I mean, I thought this movie was the SUV from hell.
The movie just goes to another level during the last half hour when they're, like,
Right.
breaking into the complex. It's like, it's a totally different movie.
I mean,
because it goes from, like, you know, they're just like cops, they've been framed, they're trying to escape prison. Suddenly they've got these badass weapons and this amazing vehicle that's like a tank with all these guns pointing. It's just, and they go blow shit up.
Yeah, I mean, and your villain is Jack Palance,
who is such a great villain.
You don't even, I mean, here's the thing. When you get a guy like Jack Palance, you don't have to explain the character at all. There is no need to explain the character. You're just like, oh, that guy. You know, and you just listen to him talking. Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Oh, he's got such personality.
It's amazing.
You can just hear it in his voice.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You instantly buy him. You even get Gul Dukat. He's in the movie.
Which, funny enough, Andrew Robinson, who was Garrick.
Oh, he was in Cobra.
In Cobra.
No shit. What's with Stallone working with these bloody Cardis? Working with the Cardassians. The bloody Cardis can't be trusted. Oh, that's terrible of me to say.
You sound like a Bajoran terrorist.
Yeah, right. That is so funny. I'd have to, you know, I mean, I kind of want to think about this more, and I wonder who else showed up. And I bet there's some other Cardassians in Stallone films. That
Cardassians or Star Trek characters?
Well, I mean, but this is 2 Cardassians. That's pretty specific. But I mean, I imagine there's other. Anyway, I'm sure if I thought about
you
it,
said there were actors. There was a guy who played a Klingon.
Oh no, that was in another movie that we're gonna get to. That's all right. Yeah.
Very recent movie.
Yeah. That we just watched the other night. Though Tango and Cash we just watched the other night too.
Mm.
Yeah, this is a movie, very troubled production. Went through 3 directors. It really, I mean, other than in America, and this just proves how little taste America has. Outside of America, this movie is massive. This movie is like, yeah, we love Tango and Cash. Like, everybody fucking loves that movie. There are admittedly, there are a lot of actors in this that were in Blade Runner. That's an interesting thing to bring up. But regardless, yeah, this is just one of the ultimate buddy cop movies. I mean, you're right. It's so much fun. The score from Harold Faltermeyer is fantastic. Yeah, I love this movie. It's hilarious. Terry Hatcher's tremendous. It's a great film, and you get a very young Terry Hatcher. Like, this is pre-Lois Lane, which I've always argued she's probably the best Lois Lane that there will ever be. Yeah, great film. I'd give it an 8 or a 9 even, because I really love this movie a lot. People don't give it a chance, and they don't just like enjoy it. And it speaks to the idea that I think when people, if they go back to some of these films, they're going to realize how shitty movies are today. And suddenly something that was considered shitty in 1989 is now a masterpiece because it's real, or it feels more real, more legit. Interestingly, Tango and Cash is actually the literal last movie of the 1980s. And I think it shows. I think it shows, like, it is that 1980s bombast. And we never really got anything quite like it again. So anyway, I love that movie. All right, want to move on to another one?
Sure.
All right, let's try to do a couple more. Let's stick with Buddy Cop.
Okay.
Cuffs.
Oh, man. So the score for Cuffs.
Yeah, another Harold Faltermeyer score. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
It was stuck in my head all night.
I know.
I just kept humming it. I would catch myself doing it and be like, stop that. But it's so catchy.
The soundtrack's great. Yeah, for Cuffs. Now, this is a Christian Slater vehicle who was white hot at the time in, I think, 1992 when this came out. He plays, I mean, this is an ANCAP's dream of a movie because it has to do with a private police force. So, you see, it's okay. As long as the police force is private, you can shoot people in ANCAP world. No, I'm kidding. But
I think in some people's minds that's true.
Yes. As long as it's private, it's fine. And you're paying for it. As long as you're paying for the privilege of getting shot voluntarily, then it's all right. So, no, anyway.
Well,
anyway.
In Tango and Cash, they really had clever, funny lines.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cuffs was trying to be clever and funny, like in a different sort of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was good. I definitely was interested in watching the film.
Yep.
And had fun the entire time. And also, I was introduced there to a character that is actually a major character in Babylon 5.
Bruce Boxleitner's in this movie. Yes, Tron himself is in the film, or Captain Sheridan if you're a B5 fan. Continue.
Yeah. It starts out really heart-wrenching, the movie does. And I think they're like trying to make you not like the main character. But then over time, nobody likes him actually in the beginning. Everybody wants him to leave. They don't want him to like take charge of the police force.
Right.
But he really does like use some unconventional approaches and gains the respect of his new clients and eventually the police force. And he plays a little fast and loose at times, but that's what makes him successful. So it was fun in that way.
I love how he breaks the fourth wall constantly and talks to the audience constantly. I think it does that in such a clever way. It's not unique in that, but the delivery just feels unique. It's also Mila Jovovich's, I think might be her first film or one of her first films. I've watched this movie since I was a little guy, and I always thought it's another one that had somewhat of that cool factor. It didn't hurt that Tron was in it, like the character of Tron,
right?
Like that just blew my mind.
You told me that as soon as you saw him on screen, you yelled Tron.
Yeah. My mother like wondered what the hell is going on. I mean, I was very young, but I just couldn't believe that there was Tron, and because well, anyway, Tron's something we haven't gotten to Tron yet, but we're gonna get to that at some point. We haven't watched it yet. Anyway, I could tell that story at some point, but so Cuffs, I like that movie a lot. It really, I mean, it has kind of everything going for it. It definitely feels very 90s. There's no doubt about that now. But I think it works for what it is. And what I meant by private police force in it, like basically, and at some point in San Francisco's history, this was actually possible, or in California's history, where you could hire and actually this is possible elsewhere too, where you could hire an independent patrol force that was not the police, and so that's what's going on in this movie. And anyway, we'll leave it at that. What do you give this as far as a ranking?
This is another movie where I'd give it like a 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah.
I love how high all this is. Absolutely.
I'm very generous with my ratings.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was being really critical, I could go lower, but I would not consider going higher.
Yeah.
It's an action movie, and it's got some good moments, but the story's pretty basic.
Yeah, I would go with the 7.75 as well. I find myself not liking it as much now as I know I did when I was younger. Like, I loved the shit out of this movie when I was younger. So that, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Want to go to another film?
Let's do it.
Okay, all right, we'll get away from the buddy cop. No more buddy cop.
All right, thanks.
And,
don't get the wrong impression. We don't actually support cops.
yeah,
in
no.
that way.
This is
just their movies.
This is just cinema, folks. If anything, it makes them all look bad. I know. Okay, so all right, we'll go there. This is going to be the best of the bunch. I know it's going to get the highest rating.
Oh my gosh, what is it? I'm waiting with bated breath.
No Holds Barred.
Oh!
1989. No Holds
Life
Barred.
gets hard when it's no holds barred.
That's right. This is starring none other than Hulk Hogan.
The Hulkster.
The Hulkster. Before he was Hollywood Hulk Hogan. This is his first real Hollywood role, or starring role anyway. He would go on to do such classics, of course, as Suburban Commando, three Ninjas Kickback, Mr. Nanny. I think it was Mr. Nanny. And I'm not looking at anything, folks. I know this shit, okay?
I can't wait to see these.
I don't own any of them because it's a miracle if you can even find them.
You said they're classics.
I remember really liking Suburban Commando. And of course he would go on to be on TV and do Thunder in Paradise, which is a very interesting show about a super boat. But I love any show with a super vehicle. I am fucking there. But anyway, okay. So No Holds Barred. He plays the wrestler Rip Taylor, who is basically Hulk Hogan, just with a different name in the film. And he has to take on this character of Zeus. And so it's a wrestling movie, that meets and it's from a time when wrestling was still thought to be largely real, or at least people still kind of had that possibility existed. Vince McMahon had yet to come out and admit that, guess what? It's sports entertainment. It's all fake, or it's all staged, I should say. Fake is the wrong word. Tell me about this film. I mean, what do you think?
Well, the character of Rip himself is, it's very clear that it's Hulk. They try to make him seem like such a nice guy.
Yeah, very sensitive.
He's so, he's educated and intelligent and soft-spoken.
Right.
But when he gets in the ring, he's a monster.
Yeah, it makes monster noises. Roar, the whole thing. Yeah, right.
Also, this film is really interesting because it paints the executives of these television networks as really horrible psycho people. The main villain in this movie, he takes some people, and this is actually part of one of the major plot devices in this film. He's looking for he tries to get Rip to sign on to his network, but Rip isn't interested.
Right.
So he's decides to get vengeance by starting up a competing sports entertainment
Battle
show.
of the Tough Guys.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And he goes to a local bar and he's watching these I don't know what to call them besides just
brawlers.
Backwoods brawlers.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of country drunkards. They're all just fighting each other with no rules in the middle of this bar. And part of what makes it so amazing is the crowd of people that's around. And that's really what the exec wanted in the show too. He didn't just want the wrestlers. He wanted the hillbillies.
Element.
Yeah, the drunken hillbillies.
Right.
One of his associate says to him but these people would cheer at a hanging, and he's like, exactly.
Well, I think all of this is on purpose. Obviously it's a film, but I think Vince McMahon, who was very much involved in the development of this, wanted that message of that TV execs are fucking heinous, and probably had a lot to do with what he had to go through just to get some of his product on air. So yeah, I think this movie has a slightly deeper level, not too deep, but a slightly deeper level that is trying to say something.
Yeah, there's some strange events in the movie. Like, there's this woman that gets repeatedly abused, attacked. There's even like a rape event.
Yes, right.
And Rip, I almost called him Hulk. Rip is always there to like save her.
Yeah.
And basically, she's like being used to
Seduce Rip.
Yeah, seduce him, or she's being used to like lure him.
Mm-hmm. To get him to sign.
Or convince him. Yeah. And that's kind of horrifying, but I feel like you mentioned this and it got me thinking, like, maybe there's some truth to that.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, the wrestling industry itself has a lot of darker circles, shall we say, or darker elements to it. But, you know, TV, dealing with TV execs and everything, I mean, that's a whole other beast.
Entertainment in general.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Vince McMahon has a lot of stories around that. And I think he was kind of getting to put some of that on display with this movie. Hulk Hogan was obviously one of the biggest names in the world, regardless of industry at the time in 1989. It was clearly a vehicle for him. It was a natural progression. This has happened often with wrestlers, The Rock, even John Cena and some others, even though, you know, they might not taken off the same way. But like Batista, of course, is a major actor now, getting in some of the biggest films in the world. So it's a progression that happens. Hulk Hogan very much, I mean, there were people before him, but he very much paved the way, I think, for it to be taken a little more seriously. But yeah, I think it's, especially if you're any kind of a wrestling fan, I still think it's a very entertaining film. It's a product of its time, but I think it's fun. It's over the top. It's ridiculous. It might even be too cheesy.
Yeah, like after we finished watching it, I said, like, if you told me that this movie was written for an audience that was 13 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I would believe it.
Yeah.
Because it is that, like, cheesy and over the top.
Yeah.
And some parts of it are, like, ridiculous.
Right. I mean, it was a great way, admittedly, to have Hulk Hogan on home video, which was not something you could take for granted in 1989 or, you know, in 1990. Sure. And if you're a huge fan of Hulk Hogan, I was, you'd be all over this because he does all the Hogan stuff.
Yeah, the wrestling sequences are great.
Right.
It's just like you're watching WWE.
Yeah, I mean, the movie even opens up with Mean Gene Okerlund and Jesse the Body Ventura, you know, talking to each other, on the side of the ring or at ringside. And yeah, I mean, it's got a point. I gotta say, I mean, if I didn't watch this when I was young and I just kind of watched it now, I don't know how I'd color it. You know, I don't know how exactly I'd feel about it, but as it stands, Hulk Hogan was just such a force back then. You can't help but be magnetized to the screen. I think as ridiculous as he might be, you know, just seeing somebody like that is just remarkable.
He really, he looks like a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a beast. And there's a joke at the beginning. Well, it's not a joke necessarily, but I think it's meant to be kind of funny. The studio exec, when he's first trying to convince Rip to sign on, he invites him into his office, and he's got these 2 chairs. So they're like Louis the 14th or something.
Oh, yeah.
And he dusts them off, and he's like, they're made for great men. And Hulk sits in it, and it creaks like it's going to break.
Yeah, like it's going to break, yeah.
But Hulk standing next to this guy, he's literally great. He has so much mass. It's
right.
just, and you have to be amazed. Like, the studio exec has the tenacity to speak to Rip rudely, and then Rip just like grabs him and shoves his check down his throat. And you wonder why he just didn't do that in the first place, because he could have at any point in time, he could smash this guy. Yes. But he doesn't.
Yeah, see, that I feel like that might be, I really feel like there are some messages that are trying to get parlayed with this film. Like the idea that, you know, what you think is great and powerful is not, you know, because like Rip has a lot of elements, like his word is his bond. What he says he's going to do, like what matters to him is his charity work. Like, and these are things you could say are cliche, fine, but it is designed to stand in contrast to the money men, and whatever, like be it Louis the 14th or the television exec. And so I think there's something trying to be told there. I'm not saying it does a good job of it. Okay. You might have to watch it 100 times like I have to finally get it, but I think there is something trying to be done in that film. The Blu-ray itself is incredibly bare bones, has a couple of great matches, or interesting matches. I wouldn't call them great, but has a couple of interesting matches when Zeus, the villain in the movie, actually, who's played by Tiny Tim Lister, who you mentioned earlier that there was a person who was in Star Trek. He played Klang.
Yeah, the Klingon.
Yeah, the Klingon in that they're taking to Kronos
in Enterprise.
In Broken Bow, in the first episode of Enterprise. Yeah. He's been in a bunch of other movies. Fifth Element, he played the president and whatever. He's just this huge, dude. Anyway, he wrestled for a little bit in '89. I don't know, think it turned out very well, but he went for it. Certainly an impressive, big guy. We watched the matches as well. Those are kind of interesting to see. A bit of a time capsule. Yeah. So, all right. Well, so what would you rank this film?
Oh gosh. Well, since you add in the fact that it is presenting like a contrast of values, like you can be great if you pursue money and power, or if you pursue personal power by like strength training, or even doing the charity and actually being a kind person and getting people to like you. That is another interesting element, and it makes me feel better about this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I would. I guess I would give it a 7.
7 out of 10.
I'm trying to.
That's very gracious.
I'm trying to be gracious.
You are being gracious.
The acting is rough, but it was just so full of laughs that I have to give it a 7.
I love it. All right, I'll do the same. I'll match it. So I haven't disagreed with you on any of the rankings, which is great.
You can if you want to.
yeah. No. I mean, and I would have. The only thing, if you said, I wouldn't have been surprised if you said like 5 or 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
I would have said a 7.
I think maybe there was a movie we watched recently that I gave a 5, and I wonder if it was that one. But now that I've had time to absorb it a little more, I do like it a little better.
I think you gave it a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to wrap this up.
But we love wrestling so much.
That's true.
That's
true. We are fans.
The wrestling matches at the end kind of gave it a little extra, I think.
Yeah. It is pretty awesome action at that point. Okay. We need to wrap this up. All I want is a ranking, though, because I want to tease this.
Oh, okay.
Give me a ranking for Dark City.
Oh.
This whole time I've been having you give the ranking first. I'll go first on this one.
Yeah, you go.
10 out of 10. Instantaneous 10 out of 10. I think the movie's amazing.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that.
Dark City. There we go. We saw the director's cut. I guess we got to be particular on that.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. All right, that is a story for another time. So anyway,
I can't believe we haven't talked about that yet.
I know we need to. Brazil, we'll do a double header because they're films of a type.
They're both huge films.
Yeah, Brazil and Dark City. We'll cover both of those maybe next time you're on. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap this baby up. Ellen, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
And such fascinating stuff to discuss all across the board. And we'll be following up on some of these stories, certainly. And we're going to have you on again. Hell, it might even be next time. We'll see. So anyway. All right. That's it. We need to go, do our thing. So we will see all of you on the other side. Woo.
Thank you for listening to Sovryn Tech, an Osiris One production. Now go out there and make some trouble.